and it has a map and all the names.
Well, you're generally assigned to a district or ward and a certain section of that. And you'd be given like a set number of houses on a given street. On a good day, you have a series of good conversations with people about policies. New Hampshire voters, a lot of them respond very well to face-to-face communication, as well as having just a voice to listen to, just speaking to them on a one-to-one level. And that's the core of what the campaign is trying to do. Just reach out to voters personally in terms of how each one of these policies, each one of these planks of the platform actually speak to their day-to-day, platforms.
With the 2020 primary set to break a record for campaign spending in the state, a whopping estimated $150 million, those on the ground know how high the stakes are.
Noah told me that he's gotten better since first starting in the job back in July.
So at first I was like a little skittish about coming up, but you just kind of go.
And as for Albert, the highs and lows are worth it. And as for
the aspect of like speaking to somebody who's so ideologically opposed to you that they're just like, get out. So that's tough. On the flip side, you have people who are absolutely with you, 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 people who are absolutely.
Healthcare, education, and the economy are all top issues for voters in this election. Add the distribution of income and wealth in the U.S., and that's 4 of the top 10, according to a recent Gallup poll. One Democratic candidate looking to bridge the divide between the haves and the have-nots is Andrew Yang. He's launched a pilot program for his universal basic income proposal. And NBC News Now's Simone Boyce caught up with Yang and some recipients, including one New Hampshire resident.
I teach 5th grade. I thought this is probably a mass email. This is too good to be true. But then I got the check, I deposited in my bank account, and I was able to stop at Target on my way to work and pick up 34 new notebooks for my students that day.
This is what it feels like to see an extra $1,000 in your bank account every month. No strings attached. Andrew Yang's presidential campaign sifted through 500,000 applicants and randomly picked these 8 to test out his signature pitch, the Freedom Dividend. It's a universal basic income plan that would give $1,000 a month to every adult over the age of 18.
Now, our country is run by a software that does not care about us at all. It's like the software of capital efficiency and economic optimization. And in theory, the mechanism to address that is the fact that we live in a democracy and then can actually make changes for the better, fix things. But our democracy now is not what it once was.
Everybody loves free money. They all seem very happy to be here and spending time with you. I wonder why.
The beauty of it is, number one, just seeing the difference it makes in people's lives. I mean, it's so touching and joyous. But number two, it shows other Americans what it looks like in real life.
Through stump speeches, debate appearances, and Iowa diner meet and greets, Yang hopes to convince America that this is the solution to a lot of our problems, like income inequality and job losses from automation. 25% of American jobs are at high risk of being wiped out by automation. That's according to a study by the Brookings Institute.
How is just $1,000 a month actually going to make a difference? I mean, has it made a difference in your life?
This is going to give me a cushion to just go out and do what I want to do. And I think that's what's going to happen. If people are going to be losing their jobs, they're going to have this cushion where they can at least get by until something comes up for them.
So how does Andrew Yang, a tech entrepreneur turned presidential hopeful, plan to pay for all this? Well, right now, his campaign is paying these Freedom Dividend recipients. But here's his big idea. Implement a 10% value-added tax on the production of almost all goods and services, everything but clothing and groceries.
If we have Amazon pay its fair share, along with Google for every ad, Facebook, Uber, all of these giant tech companies, we can generate hundreds of billions in new revenue very, very quickly.
Yang claims a value-added tax would only cause a minimal price increase in the items we buy and use every day. And plenty of other countries have a similar tax. But most economists think a value-added tax would significantly impact consumers and hit the poor the hardest. While a small-scale UBI program already exists in Alaska,
concerns about mild memory loss related to aging? Prevagen is the #1 pharmacist-recommended memory support brand. You can find it in the vitamin aisle in stores everywhere. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
Uh-oh.
What? I think I forgot to lock my Buick. Got it.
I bet you lunch you can't make it in there.
I'm thinking sushi.
Alexa, ask Buick to start my SUV.
You can do that? You can do that? You can do that?
Yeah, with the Buick.
What?
At the heart of every Buick SUV is you. Find out why Buick is #1 in dealer sales and service satisfaction. Pay no interest for 72 months on most Buick SUV models. Plus, current eligible GM owners get $750 purchase allowance.
Maya, what are you doing?
I'm slinging my shows, and I just added the Sports Extra package.
We're supposed to be at dinner in 10 minutes.
I forgot to tell you. I'm on couch arrest.
Is that a garage door opener?
We're in trouble now.
Get the #1 live TV streaming service for less at sling.com.
You seem from your tweets today that you were upset about the Roger Stone sentencing.
Yeah, I thought it was ridiculous that if that's no, I didn't speak to the judge. I'd be able to do it if I wanted. I have the absolute right to do it. I stay out of things to a degree that people wouldn't believe, but I didn't speak to him. I thought the recommendation was ridiculous. I thought the whole prosecution was ridiculous. And I look at others that haven't been prosecuted, or I don't know where it is now. But when you see that, I thought it was an insult to our country, and it shouldn't happen. And we'll see what goes on there. But that was a horrible aberration. These are I guess the same Mueller people that put everybody through hell, and I think it's a disgrace. No, I have not been involved with it at all.
Just for
Sorry, are we allowed to laugh?
Nothing to see here.
The Bloomberg ad with the gingerbread man that just says lie, 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 lie. I mean, he's all over all this. He tweeted at night. Lindsey Graham talked to Bill Barr before he went on the Sunday show, so I'm pretty sure Donald Trump can get him on the line anytime he wants to about matters of law and justice as they pertain to his longest-serving political advisor.
And how many Twitter followers does he have?
Just a few. But frankly, I mean, we also have to get to a point where that isn't even laughably a response to what happened. 4 career prosecutors resigned over one case. I talked to 2 former senior officials at DOJ who said they couldn't remember that ever happening over big controversial cases. One left the department entirely, a clear signal that all is not copacetic, as Trump signaled.
Let's bring in our friend Josh Gerstein, who not only covered the Roger Stone trial, he's senior legal affairs correspondent for Politico. Josh, I'm told you were in federal court this morning with 2 of these 4 who obviously did not tip their hand that a career choice was coming from them later today.
No, I don't think they saw this coming at all, though obviously they knew there was something afoot in the Roger Stone case because of the president's 1:48 a.m. tweet. But Jonathan Kravis, who's the #2 in the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. in the fraud and public corrections, for further court proceedings, and they certainly didn't evince any intention or expectation that they'd be quitting either the Stone case or, in Kravis's case, quitting the U.S. government altogether within just a matter of hours of walking out of that courtroom.
And Josh, can we emphasize for our viewers who may not know how this works that these are lawyers working for the federal government who can make kaleidoscopically, exponentially more money at any number of law firms just blocks away from where they practice for the federal government. For reasons that we can all thank God for, they have chosen to be public servants for a part of their legal careers and had chosen to work for the Department of Justice. Now they've withdrawn themselves.
That's absolutely right, Brian. You know, you're talking about very respected attorneys. They teach at local universities. At least one of them is a former Supreme Court clerk for both for Republican appointed justices on the Supreme Court and on the D.C. Circuit. So it's just very surprising to see this kind of a dramatic action. It does look like they resigned on principle, although So far, the Justice Department has really been mum about whether they were pushed out or basically jumped. But some of the court filings do use the word resigned, so it does appear that they're the ones who decided they were protesting this decision by Attorney General Barr and other leaders in the Justice Department to reverse the recommendation they'd filed last night of a rather lengthy sentence for Roger Stone.
Josh Gerstein, who was our man explaining the Stone case in real time on our broadcasts, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Another
Brian.
Quick break for us. I lied before the top of the hour. When we come back, Kornacki has more data at the big board.
Thank you. It's an honor to tell you that Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
I love you!
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Once weekly Ozempic is helping many people with type 2 diabetes like James lower their blood sugar. A majority of adults who took Ozempic reached an A1C under 7 and maintained it.
Here's your A1C.
Oh, my A1C is under 7.
And you may lose weight. Adults who took Ozempic lost on average up to 12 pounds.
I lost almost 12 pounds.
Oh.
Ozempic does not increase the risk of major cardiovascular events like heart attack, stroke, or death.
There's no increased risk.
Oh.
And I only have to take it once a week.
Oh. Ozempic should not be the first medicine for treating diabetes or for people with type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Do not share needles or pens. Don't reuse needles. Do not take Ozempic if you have a personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer, multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2, or if you are allergic to Ozempic. Stop taking Ozempic and get medical help right away if you get a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, itching, rash, or trouble breathing. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis. Tell your doctor if you have diabetic retinopathy or vision changes. Taking Ozempic with a sulfonylurea or insulin may increase low blood sugar risk. Common side effects are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, stomach pain, and constipation. Some side effects can lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems.
Once weekly Ozempic is helping me reach my blood sugar goal.
You may pay as little as $25 per prescription. Ask your healthcare provider today about once weekly Ozempic.
It's just a cough.
Yeah, right. And the earth is flat.
Treat your cough seriously with Robitussin CF Max. Nothing lasts longer and treats more symptoms for your cough, cold, and flu. Robitussin, because it's never just a cough.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-794-9800. That's 1-800-794-9800 now.
That's our headquarters in Manchester, New Hampshire. Top of the 7 o'clock hour East Coast, which means another wave of polls has closed in New Hampshire. So that will affect the raw vote totals we get in, but it will affect none of the projections we are eventually going to make throughout this evening as we continue to cover two major stories, the goings-on at the Justice Department, and of course the vote coming in from New Hampshire. So we'll go to Steve Kornacki in just a moment. We want to start off with Katie Turr, who is in Nashua, New Hampshire. Katie, people are speaking, especially on social media, about how the numbers at this hour at the polling places seem different than they were last time around, though it's not an apples-to-apples comparison.
No, you can't do that. The numbers here were a little bit over 6,000 in 2016, and they're on track to potentially get a little bit higher than that here, but they're going to wait to find out. Actually, I think it was 4,000. Sorry, my math brain is not very good. Brent, I want to show you just a sample ballot here, because I was talking to a Republican voter a little bit earlier who ended up voting for Bill Weld because she didn't want to vote for Donald Trump. And she said when she looked at the Republican ballot, she saw a lot of names that she frankly did not recognize on the Republican ticket, but she went for Bill Weld, and she's going to decide in November whether or not she wants to vote for a Democrat or Donald Trump. She says she's not really into Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. Interestingly, and a lot of people don't realize this, when you look at the Democratic ballot, you'll see a lot of names for candidates who are no longer here. Marianne Williamson being one of them. Cory Booker is another one. Julian Castro, another one. Even though they have dropped out of the race, their names are still on these ballots. So there is a chance that there are voters out there who just really like them and wanted to vote for them regardless. Not necessarily going to impact the race here, but it is a choice that you can make. We have seen, as we saw before, a steady stream of people coming in to register to vote. They're going to be watching this number very closely. New registered voters could be a good thing for the Democrats coming up in November, and certainly for the primary as well. They're going to vote here. They're undeclared. Remember, you can undeclare when you walk out. And we're going to try and talk to some voters. I'm not really allowed to talk to them inside, so we're going to have to go outside where it is cold and rainy. And we're also going to have to cross our fingers to find out if anyone's going to come out right behind us. Because as you can see, it's pitch black out here. It's not very enticing or exciting, but I do believe there's a couple people behind us. Ma'am, would you like to tell us who you voted for? I'm all set, thank you. You're all set. What about you, ma'am? I'm going to pass. You're going to pass. I get this a lot out here.
So it's
people
edgy,
don't want to tell me who
experimental,
they
late-night
voted
rain on television.
You know, they want it to remain within themselves. They feel like it is a personal experience. It's a personal choice, and they shouldn't have to tell some nosy reporter who's bombarding them as they walk out of a high school gym.
Yeah, in a dark night, waiting, like lurking outside. Let's be frank here. Outside.
I know I'm in all black, so I look
right.
very. I don't look shady at all.
Right.
Katie, you know what? It happened at 4. I'm going to say what I said then. I don't think it's you. I think it's me. And we love you. And we love your reports. Thank you. Keep it up.
Well, we have these voters. Hold on. Sir, real fast. Sure. Can you tell me who you voted for?
Amy Klobuchar.
Amy Klobuchar.
Yes. Amy
when did you decide?
As I was walking across the parking lot just now.
Okay, yes. So what happened in your head as you were walking across the parking lot?
Amy can beat Trump.
You think so?
I think so.
Okay.
She's real. She's genuine. And she's my candidate.
See that?
Amy all the way.
A lot of voters as well making their decision at the last moment. Thank you so very much.
Thank
I appreciate it.
Have
a good night.
Okay, take back everything we said. Take back everything we said.
Katie Tur always delivers.
You found a fascinating voter in New Hampshire. Katie Tur, thank you. Over to Steve Kornacki. Steve, those ballots, that's like a list of everyone I've ever met.
Like a takeout menu.
That's on the party. I mean, who do you see about something like that on either side?
It is amazing when you look at something that long that people end up finding, it seems, every time the candidate they're looking for with all those choices on there. We can tell you, look, we showed you this earlier, Brian. These are just the earliest of early returns. These are the midnight votes that came in overnight. This is just a scattering of votes. It adds up to about 20 total. So this is a tiny, microscopic fraction of the state. But polls have now just closed in essentially 80% of the state. So we're expecting vote to start coming in quickly. Manchester, biggest city in the state, that closed at 7. We'll get numbers from Manchester, from Concord, from Portsmouth, from Keene. Mainly the part of the state where you're not going to have vote. And as it comes in, this could end up, I don't know, I went into Maine for some reason. Mainly, as the vote comes in, this could be significant. It's Nashua. That's the second largest city in the state. And you work your way around there to Hudson, to Pelham, Londonderry. What these are bedroom communities, folks who commute to Boston, to 128, 495 in Massachusetts. These are parts of the state. Sanders did very well in New Hampshire in 2016 across the board, but he struggled. Struggles is not the right word here. He didn't perform as well in this part of the state. It's more densely populated, a lot of college degrees, higher incomes. Didn't perform as well there as he did in some other parts of the state. And again, about 20% of the vote is not going to come in until 8 o'clock. It's going to be in that sort of Nashua area there. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But again, in the rest of the state, basically about 80% of the state, including Manchester and all those other cities, the polls are now closed. We're awaiting the returns.
All right, Steve Kornacki at the big board, thank you. I am about to call for something that was said on live television by our friend A.B. Stoddard, who is a longtime writer, journalist, columnist, currently with Real Clear Politics. I asked her about the current shape of the Democratic Party, and of course you have to add the post-Iowa Democratic Party. And then, of course, you have to throw in the fact that there is not the billionaire on the race, on the ballot tonight, but the other Democratic billionaire who is tossing money grenades into this race from outside of this race, where he has yet to compete per se. We watched him get some write-in votes last night after the stroke of midnight. And here now, and we'll use this to start off a conversation here with our friends. Here is A.B. Stoddard from last night.
Jonathan Swan described Michael Bloomberg as a party unto himself. He is literally a human super PAC saving the Democratic Party from itself. The DNC is broke, it's anemic, it's dysfunctional, and it's carrying debt. Without Michael Bloomberg, they do not have a chance. And I think Carville and other voices in the establishment have all these fears, but he's the only one that's actually going out and talking about them.
So as they say, that happened, and you should have seen Joy Reid's eyes during that. Joy Reid is with us. Steve Schmidt, former Republican strategist, is with us, and Karine Jean-Pierre, public affairs officer at MoveOn.org. Welcome. You win the biggest eye award while she was talking.
Wow. I mean, Tom Steyer is probably a little bit surprised here. He's one of the biggest donors in the Democratic Party that he's not doing anything. I mean, look, I have been shocked by the number of, including black voters from Tennessee to upstate New York, to as traveling around doing a lot of MLK events last month, that are open to Bloomberg and that are Warren to Bloomberg voters, people who were for Warren but then are worried she can't win, worried a woman can't win, and they go right to Bloomberg. I am curious to see what the new revelations about stop and frisk, because when it's theoretical, it's one thing. When he's saying we throw him up against the wall, it's very different. So, and none of these polls that have shown him jumping up have priced that in. So I'm interested to see if it lasts.
So can you put together in your brilliant brain what the potential, because I think Bloomberg right now is a story about political potential. Yeah. It's not an actual campaign story yet. Right. But because I talked to a Trump voter last night who said the only person that I would leave Trump for is, and I'm waiting for someone crazier, like who's crazier than who? What's this person going to say to me? It was Bloomberg. And I said, what? You'd vote for Bloomberg? And this person said, yeah, because I wouldn't have the fears that I have with all the other Democrats about the economy. So just in your sort of imagine not letting our imagination limit us. I mean, the coalition he could put together is unique and distinct from everyone else, it would seem, in the Democratic field.
And it's huge. And so Bloomberg is a strange sort of character. You know, Tim O'Brien, who's, you know, our friend of the show, who has kind of described him as sort of an FDR. So if you care about the environment, he spends his money on environmental causes. If you care about gun reform, he had the guts to go up against the NRA, those Parkland kids when they did the March for Our Life. His money was used to create that. You know, Shannon Watt's organization. He's funded, there's a sort of Bloomberg Mayors University that's put a lot of black mayors where they are. So he's got a lot of potential to have black elected officials, and you see them coming forward because he's actually put his money where his mouth is on those liberal causes. On the other hand, he did the two things that really go together, which is gentrification and stop and frisk in New York, so that when you're gentrifying a neighborhood in Brooklyn, now the new people who move in, the rich people, are afraid of the old people that were there, that were in the projects in Fort Greene, and then you start stop and frisk, and it's intense, and he's been defending it right up until last year. He defended the crime bill, and he said, I don't understand why Joe Biden is embarrassed about being white. Why is he apologizing for being white? So he still sounds like a Republican to a lot of people. So it's a weird coalition, but I gotta tell you, if this is an exhaustion election, which I think it is, an exhaustion election means people just want to sleep at night.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Coming from someone with severe insomnia, they're saying that Trump is exhausting. So even, and I know Republicans who, they don't mind the fiscal policies of Trump. They like that, but they also want to sleep at night. So if you're a Republican and you still want Republican policy, but you don't want the tweets and the madness, you might go to him. If you're a Democrat that just wants to beat Trump at all costs, you see Trump as just this force of evil. and you just want the money that it's going to take to defeat him, and you think this guy will spend $2 billion to beat him, you might vote for him.
And I think something I pick up anecdotally is you want the guy that's going to fight high and low.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something, and this is a compliment, not an insult to Democrats. They follow the rules.
Absolutely.
They follow the rules. And with Trump, you can't beat him by following the rules because he cheats at everything. He asked Ukraine to help him. I mean, he cheats at everything. And there is a sense with Bloomberg, not that he'll break any rules, but that he'll go high and he'll go low. He talked about, porn and a cheeseburger and a putter being in his brain. That was our friend Tim O'Brien, too. And you cannot beat Trump unless you hit him where it hurts.
And the bottom line is, number one, you can't beat showbiz without showbiz. And Democrats don't understand showbiz, even though all of showbiz is on their side in Hollywood, but they don't understand showbiz. And the other reality is, if you want a Democrat to win, they have to know how to fight like a Republican. That's
right.
He's a Republican. He used to be anyway.
We'll continue our conversation in just a sec. Morgan Radford is up in Laconia, New Hampshire, about 45 minutes north of Manchester on Interstate 93, if traffic is moving well. They have announced actual vote total results where you are, Morgan.
That's right. Brian, Nicole, come on inside. This is the polling station in Laconia, and it just closed at 7 o'clock. Tony here, our poll moderator. Hi, Tony.
Hi, how you doing?
Just read the results here. Did the results surprise you this evening?
No, not really.
Were you surprised by the turnout?
Yes, the turnout was very good.
And what's something interesting that Tony said when we read the results here, you read 131 for Buttigieg, 116 for Klobuchar, who's gaining momentum, and 105 for Sanders. But what Tony also told us earlier today was that this is one of the more conservative areas. So of the 1,000 ballots that you roughly counted inside that ballot machine behind us, 50% were for the Republican primary. So just to show you how red this area is, it went for Donald Trump back in 2016 during the general election. And Tony is now in charge of the process here. So you're one of the reasons why a lot of the voters who we spoke to said they're confident in the process because everything here is done by hand. This is where they checked in. They mark their ballots with a pen and paper. It gets counted. And now, Tony, you're going to take that printed ticket that you have with all these vote totals here, and you're going to take them into the ballot to the Secretary of State, right?
Right.
So you actually do it. So the idea is that there's
the city clerk, and
the city clerk, and then the Secretary of State. So this is the process that the voters believe in, because basically they say this is a foolproof process. This is something that almost can't be hacked because everything is done by hand. So just a reminder of those numbers that Tony just read out when the polls closed here. Buttigieg 131, Klobuchar 116. Sanders 105, which is very reflective of what we've been hearing as we've talked to voters across the state here. Brian, Nicole, this seems like it's been a tension for voters between what's in their head and what's in their heart. A lot of the voters said they want to vote for who they like, but also because Iowa was such a disaster in terms of how they reported their results, they said they also want to set the tone here in New Hampshire for who they believe will be electable. Brian,
All right,
Nicole?
Morgan Radford, thank you for that.
And it's this refrain. I mean, it's part of the Bloomberg conversation. It's the conversation we have at 4 every day. It's electability trumps everything else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we see that in polling after polling after polling. You know, you guys were talking about Bloomberg and how it's amazing that he's been able to kind of be in there in the mix. And my thing is, as I said at 4 o'clock, he hasn't been tested yet. Let's see him on the debate stage. Let's see what happens. He's been able to give us a nice little box, a nice little ribbon, and give us the narrative of what he perceives his candidacy to be. But going back to African-American voters, black voters, they want to win. And we were talking about how people see the money as a thing that they see as competition lining up with Donald Trump. Or they see how Bloomberg has gotten under Donald Trump's skin, and so that matters to them. So yes, right now we are in an electability space in this election. Evening it out.
Good news.
We do. The ratio of body movements to quiet times, the Coach K Kornacki scale has just gone off the chart. I keep one eye on Steve all night long.
I was looking at Kareem, but I saw it.
Like a golden retriever with a tennis ball. He's got the tennis ball. Steve Kornacki has actual results.
That's my we have votes in body language, I guess. I'm learning things about myself here. So right now you see votes starting to come in here. This is the statewide total. Obviously very little in. 2 places they're starting to come in here. Interesting story. Start on Dover. This is sort of an old working class town. Sorry if I can load that there. There you go. Dover is starting to come in here a little bit more than 15% of the vote. Now, Sanders did very well in Dover in 2016, and he's leading right now. In 2016, he did a little bit better in Dover than he did statewide against Hillary Clinton. I think what's very interesting in these numbers is not just that Sanders is leading here, but I think this is something I'm going to be watching for as the numbers come in tonight. Klobuchar is running in second here, and Joe Biden is back at 5%. And I can tell you, the polling we looked at for the 9 months, the last 12 months, whatever, demographically, older, more blue collar, more white. That was Joe Biden's wheelhouse in the polling for pretty much this entire campaign. Joe Biden, for this entire campaign, Dover was the kind of city he was going to do all right in. And to see Biden coming in early at 5%, I got to scroll down to get you to Joe Biden, to see Biden at 5% and to see Klobuchar at 20%. That is suggesting to me the potential there that Klobuchar climbed in these final days and basically took a giant piece of the Biden base along with her. So Sanders leading here in Dover, Klobuchar in second, Joe Biden being left in the dust. We can also show you the other place we're getting vote, the capital city, the third largest city in the state of New Hampshire, Concord, 10% in, Klobuchar out in front here. The interesting thing about Concord is in 2016, when we use 2016 as a reference tonight, please keep in mind Bernie Sanders basically swept the state. He won all but 4 cities and towns. So keep in mind when I show you in 2016, this is Clinton and Trump. I think I click this and I get the primary. There you go. In 2016, this was actually a little worse for Sanders than he did statewide. Remember, he won by 22 statewide, 13 here in Concord. So again, notable 10% of Concord. We're not sure exactly where. But Klobuchar here in Concord out in front, Buttigieg in second, Sanders back there. And again, Biden coming in single digits there in Concord right now. So again, we've got 2 coming in. It's very early. We're obviously going to keep an eye on this. But you see in those first 2, Klobuchar doing a little bit better than we were talking about the last few weeks.
Steve Schmidt, a point of clarification. I can barely send an email, so it is nothing but awe that
largest cash advantage in American political history against every conceivable Democratic opponent in the party, which, as A.B. Stoddard said, is inept and bankrupt. And nobody should underestimate the importance of what happened in Iowa last week. It was a disaster of a magnitude that beggars my ability to describe. The collapse of that technology platform is not something that's going to beset the Republicans in November, who have a light-year distance in the technology gap between their side and the Democratic side. And so as we come out of this, whoever does well tonight, the question is, where is the next place they win? Where does Mayor Pete win next? Where does Amy Klobuchar win next? Joe Biden will go on, but he is a must-win now in Nevada or South Carolina, or he's done. And as that plays out, Bloomberg stands out there looming, the 400-pound gorilla in this race, saying, I have the resources, I have the toughness, I have the ability, I can beat this guy. And we saw today what a Donald Trump presidency unleashed and unhinged and unbound and undeterred by any effects from impeachment looks like.
And add into that, I can beat this guy because I know him from back home. Real quick to Steve Kornacki, another town has come in. Steve?
Here we go. This is one you might know if you're an auto racing fan, the New Hampshire Motor Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire, just outside Concord. And here we've got 100% reporting. You can see Buttigieg here actually ahead of Sanders. It is significant because, again, use 2016. This was right on the money in 2016 in terms of how the statewide vote went. Sanders won this by 22. He won statewide by 22. He's falling a little short of Buttigieg here with 100%. The other significant thing is every time we get to 100% in a city or town, one thing we're looking at is how many people turned out in this city or town. What was the total turnout and how does it compare to 2016? Is the turnout higher, lower, or the same? The turnout in 2016, this tiny number, you can see it here, was 814 in Loudon. The turnout tonight in Loudon with 100% in, 1,064. So the turnout is 131% of the level it was in 2016. Remember the story in Iowa, we talked about flat turnout except in a couple places. The first place in with 100% here in New Hampshire is an increase from 2016.
Steve Kornacki, thank you. Down we go to Chris Matthews, who's watching and listening to all this. Chris, what do you make of it so far?
Well, Brian and Nicole, it seems to for a long time we thought the battle on the left, if you will, the progressive side, was going to be fairly even-handed, with Bernie having an advantage historically because Vermont, well, he's much more close to Burlington, being mayor all those years. People really knew him in New Hampshire, and he was going to perhaps edge out Elizabeth Warren. Well, now he's more than, it looks like he's probably going to more than edge her out. He's probably going to trounce her. But then it looks like we've got a real competition now on the moderate side, if you will, between Klobuchar and Buttigieg, which is not going to help either one of them for a while. I think Richard Nixon, whatever you think of him, was a smart political animal. And he once said to Pat Buchanan, whenever you hear of a Stop X movement, in this case perhaps Bernie Sanders, whenever you think of a Stop X movement, bet on X. In other words, it's probably not going to work. So if all you're doing is trying to stop somebody, goodbye, you're not going to do it. Sanders walks into the nomination, whether you like it or not. But if you have an attractive candidate, somebody else that you really get excited, if not fall in love with, really like, and starting Friday night, I noticed, before I heard from anybody else, and then I heard from a lot of people in this very room, talking to them, that it was Klobuchar. They saw presidential there. They saw a presidential temperament, a presidential confidence, and they'd been looking for it for a long time. And I think for weeks up here, in fact, I love that fellow walking into the polling booth on the driveway there in the parking lot saying, I just decided on Klobuchar. And he was confident of it. He said, I have my candidate. It wasn't just, I think tonight, it's her. He said, I want her to be president. By the way, the issue is not just who's going to beat Trump. Who do you want to be president? Not just their agenda, but the person. What person do you want to have on television every day being the person who speaks for our country around the world? The one who meets with foreign leaders, the one who takes on our enemies, that person. All this talk about agenda and Medicare for all, a lot of that won't even get past the Senate. It won't get 60 votes. But you're going to get the person you elect in the White House. I'd like to, this is my opinion, I'd like to be able to start thinking about who you want in the White House. And I think Klobuchar won that prize Friday night. We'll see how she does tonight.
Chris Matthews at our election headquarters in New Hampshire. Quick break for us. We're coming right back.
I thought I had my moderate to severe ulcerative colitis under control. Turns out, it was controlling me. Seemed like my symptoms were taking over our time together. I knew I needed to talk to my doctor.
Think you'll make it?
That's when I learned Humira can help get and keep UC under control when other medications haven't worked well enough. And it helps people achieve control that lasts, so you can experience few or no symptoms.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections. Serious and sometimes fatal infections, including tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Be there for you and them. Ask your gastroenterologist about Humira. With Humira, control is possible.
He's been a leader throughout the country for the past 12 years. Mr. Michael Bloomberg is here.
Leadership in action. Mayor Bloomberg and President Obama worked together in the fight for gun safety laws, to improve education, and to develop innovative ways to help teens gain the skills needed to find good jobs.
At a time when Washington is divided in old ideological battles, he shows us what can be achieved when we bring people together to seek pragmatic solutions.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
As a struggling actor, I need all the breaks that I can get. At Liberty Buchenload.
Cut.
Liberty Bibbity.
Cut. We'll dub it.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
I found a way to relieve my constipation that's both gentle and fast. Delco
I don't feel that I am equipped to handle it. So Steve Kornacki is over at the big board. Steve, it's numbers.
You can do that.
It's numbers. It's you. What do you have since we last spoke?
Was I sending that signal again or something? All right, we've got some more votes coming in here. You see Sanders has opened up a 6% lead with 4% reporting. That's a margin there of just over 600 votes statewide. Show you a couple key places we're starting to get some votes in. Number one right here, geographically small, but there's a lot of folks who live in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, right there along the Maine border. This is sort of an upscale, culturally liberal city here. Bernie Sanders leading Buttigieg 26-23. How did this look in 2016? Sanders won this over Clinton by 13. Again, Sanders didn't do quite as well in 2016 in these places that were a little bit more upscale. He swept the state, but he didn't sweep it quite by the same magnitude in a place like Portsmouth. And Buttigieg, we've seen him doing well with this demographic in second place here, but there's Klobuchar right behind. If you move north a little bit now, different story in Somersworth. We showed you Dover earlier. Somersworth, very much like Dover. You got a lower share of college degrees there, much more blue-collar, older population. Sanders, again, did very well here in 2016, leading tonight. And you've got Buttigieg actually in second, Klobuchar back in 14, Biden and fifth place there. Let's go across the state because I'm told Keene is coming in. One thing to keep an eye on as the votes come in tonight, Bernie Sanders' sweet spot in New Hampshire is basically every town along the Connecticut River, along the New Hampshire-Vermont border. These are places where he was racking up 65, 70% plus. It's the most liberal part of this state. It also tends to be, obviously, it's very close culturally to Vermont. So take a look at Keene. This is a place where he got about 70% in 2016, home of Keene State College. What are we seeing early? Buttigieg out in front with 40% in there. Yeah, you see, in 2016, Sanders got 72% here. He is leading. It is double digits. Buttigieg and Klobuchar behind him. Again, Joe Biden just getting buried. You didn't expect him to do too well in Keene, but just getting absolutely buried there. So you zoom out here, and again, statewide, Sanders is out in front. Buttigieg and Klobuchar right back there, neck and neck with each other. Klobuchar, I mean, we could say, we talked about the polling in the last few days. The indications over the weekend, there might be some late movement to her. The numbers you're seeing are absolutely consistent with that. Amy Klobuchar is real right now.
Okay, Steve Kornacki, thanks.
I wonder when you hear about all the late vote in the late deciders and the tight race for number two, it's not always a sign of health. Sometimes it's a sign of despair. Yeah. And I wonder what you guys see.
I think this is the proof that sometimes debates matter. A lot of the time they don't, but this time a lot of people
still looking when they turn on Friday.
Absolutely. Every we had audiences when we were out there in New Hampshire. Every audience was full of people who were nervous, who felt incredible pressure to pick the right person, and who were undecided, and who were shaky on who they wanted. And when Amy Klobuchar did that well in the debate, a lot of people said, okay, I'm going to go with her. There's only room for her or Buttigieg in that lane. And Biden is really, they're freezing him out. And, what I was saying in the break is that this is sort of a focus group of white voters in the Northeast, in these two states, in these two states. What I see there is that the people coming out of New Hampshire, none of those people have resonance with black voters. None of them do. The one who has resonance,
the top three, right?
No, the ones who have resonance are Biden, who's getting crushed. And if he doesn't work out, what I'm hearing from black voters consistently, if Biden goes down, they're going to Bloomberg.
Yeah. How is it possible, though, that we're now, 28 minutes away from having results, knowing knowing what these top three finishers looks like? How do you get through two contests and not have anyone in the top three that has made any inroads?
None.
Where Mike Bloomberg, it's all his for the taking.
Yeah,
when he could screw it up too. I'm not saying.
Sure, absolutely. But when you're losing to the stop and frisk guy, you're doing something wrong. And Buttigieg and
That'll be one of the
Klobuchar,
enduring quotes from tonight.
I mean, how badly are you doing with black voters when you're polling below Mr. Stop and Frisk? They're doing something
Let me
wrong.
ask you this about African American voters, because there's also this sense, anecdotally and statistically, that they are, especially African American women, they vote with their heads, and so the pragmatism means they get behind a winner. Are they still in it for Biden? I mean, are they still there for Biden?
It's people, Karina, I think will back me up on this. African-American voters trust Joe Biden because they're like, this guy from that generation was willing to be second banana to the first black president. He was a loyal number two to the black president. There is a trust and there is an affection for him, but the support is dispassionate. The only time I've ever seen, it's strategic. The only time I've ever seen black voters emotionally passionate about a candidate was Barack Obama. Right. Other than that, they're like, Who do we have to vote for to get this Republican out? Give them to me, and they will vote for them dutifully, especially black women. There's no passion in it. And for I think there is affection. I think it's genuine for Uncle Joe. But if he has to go, black voters will, in mercenary style, go to who can beat Donald Trump. And there is nothing, there is zero that I'm seeing in terms of trust in Amy Klobuchar, who's got a prosecutorial record that's not that much better than Buttigieg's record on criminal justice. They both have a lot of problems with black voters. They're not resonating, neither of them. So they could come out of here with a win and walk into South Carolina and be ignored.
Can I ask you something? Just as a former campaign person in me, and this may be inappropriate, but we've got hours to go before we rest. Do you think the Bloomberg campaign leaked that stop and frisk video today to purge it on a day when there's lots of other news?
They have a very savvy, very sophisticated operation. I think that when you have a campaign that did what they did in Dixville Notch, it shows that they are paying attention to every detail in the race and that nobody should underestimate them going forward, for sure. And I'll also say this, is that today is the last day in the Democratic primary where the crowd standing behind the candidates is indistinguishable from a Republican crowd. We talked about this 4 years ago, and I think we were sitting next to each other. Bernie Sanders, a great victory in New Hampshire, but the question is, the Democratic Party electorate does not look like the New Hampshire Democratic Party electorate. And so we'll see how it plays out as this race evolves and it starts to go south.
Steve Kornacki has another batch of numbers. Sorry to startle you.
No, that's all right. We've got some more coming in. I can show you 5% here statewide. Again, a 5% advantage, Sanders over Buttigieg, number 2. Buttigieg and Klobuchar, within about 138 votes there, exactly 138 votes of each other. I think the interesting thing I'm seeing here early on, we can show you the new numbers that have come in. Start up here in the North Country. Gorham is now in 100%. Sanders won this thing. Buttigieg, Klobuchar there. This is interesting because this town, Gorham, was not a great town for Bernie Sanders in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. Again, he basically swept the state. He only won here in Gorham by 12 points in 2016. He won the state by 22. He's winning it tonight, and I think one of the patterns we're starting to see early on, let's see if this becomes a thing, is in a lot of these places, if you add up the Buttigieg and Klobuchar vote, it takes you past Sanders, but Buttigieg and Klobuchar are so close to each other here, 22-18. Neither one of them is able to get up there to Sanders' level. We're seeing that in a few places. So Sanders takes Gorham. We can take you, this is Candia here. This is outside Manchester. Actually, Klobuchar was able to win this one. Sanders in second place, Buttigieg right behind. I'm looking as these numbers come in to see if there are any obvious and clear demographic differences between where Klobuchar is scoring as opposed to Buttigieg, to see if there are patterns that emerge there. Nothing too clear right now. And again, that possibility, just when you look statewide, Sanders does have a bit of a leg up in the early reporting between Buttigieg and Klobuchar. Let's see if a demographic pattern emerges that favors a Buttigieg or that favors a Klobuchar and that allows them to move up and challenge Sanders for lead. It's only 5% in. There's a lot of the states still to come in, but that's what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, at this point in the evening, the map looks a little Jackson Pollock, but we'll fill in those we'll fill in those colors as we go. Another break, and just to let you know, we're going to continue, of course, to follow the thread of the DOJ story. We'll be joined by Rachel Maddow. We'll talk about Joe Biden, who has an event coming up in a few minutes. Oh, it's in South Carolina. A lot to tell you about when we come back.
If you have moderate to severe psoriasis, little things can become your big moment. That's why there's Otezla. Otezla is not a cream. It's a pill that treats plaque psoriasis differently. With Otezla, 75% clear skin is achievable. Don't use if you're allergic to Otezla. It may cause severe diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. Otezla is associated with an increased risk of depression. Tell your doctor if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts, or if these feelings develop. Some people taking Otezla reported weight loss. Your doctor should monitor your weight and may stop treatment. Upper respiratory tract infection and headache may occur. Tell your doctor about your medicines and if you're pregnant or planning to be. Otezla, show more of you.
We made USAA insurance for members like Martin, an Air Force veteran made of doing what's right, not what's easy. So when a hailstorm hit, USAA reached out before he could even inspect the damage.
That's how you do it right.
USAA insurance is made just the way Martin's family needs it. With hassle-free claims, He got paid before his neighbor even got started. Because doing right by our members, that's what's right. USAA. What you're made of, we're made for.
USAA. When your skin is feeling dry and crinkly, time for Gold Bond Healing Lotion. Penetrates 10 surface layers deep with 7 moisturizers, 3 vitamins. Skin is nourished, healed, healthy looking. Gold Bond Healing. Ultimate lotion, ultimate skin.
At Fidelity, online U.S. stocks and ETFs are commission-free. And when you open a new brokerage account, your cash is automatically invested at a great rate. That's why Fidelity leads the industry in value, while our competition continues to talk.
What's going on? It's a 3 p.m. slump.
Should add a P3.
Oh, yeah.
Need energy? Get P3 with a mix of meat, cheese, and nuts.
Uh-oh.
What?
I think I forgot to lock my Buick. Got it.
I bet you lunch you can't make it in there.
I'm thinking sushi.
Alexa, ask Buick to start my SUV.
You can do that?
You can do that? You can do that?
Yeah, with the Buick.
What?
At the heart of every Buick SUV is you. Find out why Buick is #1 in dealer sales and service satisfaction. Pay no interest for 72 months on most Buick SUV models. Plus, current eligible GM owners get $750 purchase allowance.
When we started our business, we were paying like an arm and a leg for the postage. I remember setting up ShipStation. I think it was just like 1 or 2 clicks. Everything was up and running. I was printing out labels and saving money.
ShipStation saves us so much time. It makes it really easy and seamless. Pick an order, print everything you need, slap the label onto the box, and it's ready to go.
Our cost for shipping, like, we're cut in half, just like that.
ShipStation, the #1 choice of online sellers. Go to shipstation.com/try and get 2 months free.
Can my side be firm?
And my side super soft?
Yes, with the Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed. On sale now. You can both adjust your comfort with your Sleep Number setting.
Come on, Pup, time to go. Can it help me fall asleep faster?
Yes, by gently warming your feet.
But can it help keep me asleep?
Absolutely. It intelligently senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable.
So you can really promise better sleep?
Not promise, prove. And now, during the Ultimate Sleep Number event, save 50% on the Sleep Number 360 Limited Edition Smart Bed. Plus 0% interest for 24 months on all smart beds. Only for a limited time.
We are back. There's the all-important number. The polls close statewide, must be closed by 8 p.m. Any categorizations we're going to make of the vote will come after that. Steve Kornacki's at the board with 18 minutes to go, but more results in.
Yeah, take a look here at the statewide number here, 6% in. I want to tell you 2 things here. This really gets to what we are looking for that's still to come in. 7 o'clock closing time. We have no vote yet from the Queen City, the city of Manchester, the largest in the state of New Hampshire. Again, this is a place, obviously, a lot of vote in here. Sanders won it in 2016, but he wasn't that strong here in 2016 relative to how he performed statewide. So obviously Manchester, when that comes in, we're keeping a close eye on it. The polls closed there at 7. No vote out of Manchester. Yeah, I can remember some of these primary nights when Manchester was the first to report, but tonight that is not the case. So we're waiting on Manchester. But the other thing to draw your attention to, again, you mentioned those poll closings coming up at 8. Draw your attention to this part of the state. Basically, along the Massachusetts-New Hampshire line, Nashua, you work your way east to Hudson, to Pelham. You move up to Derry, Londonderry, this area in here. This is I'm being told we have some Manchester vote. Let's see if I can get right into that right now. Okay, Manchester is coming in. A third of Manchester just came in. Bernie Sanders leads at 30, Buttigieg 22, Klobuchar 19. Take a look what happened here in 2016. Sanders won this by 14. His statewide margin in 2016 was 22. So he underperformed here relative to statewide, but he leads by 8 with a third in Manchester. Again, we're going to take a closer look here to see which wards these are, if there's going to be a change as it comes in. But that's a big chunk of the biggest city in New Hampshire. What that does to the statewide tally board is it moves Sanders ahead now about 1,400 votes here, 1,300 and change over Buttigieg, 8% in. So we're starting to get some votes from Manchester. And the thought I was just setting up there, again, the 8 p.m. poll closing time, Nashua is the biggest single thing there to close at 8, second largest city in the state. Nashua and a lot of these bedroom communities right along the Massachusetts-New Hampshire line. Again, this should be moving right along the Massachusetts-New Hampshire line. You got Route 3, you got Route 93 coming right there from Massachusetts on into New Hampshire. A lot of folks who work in Mass, live in New Hampshire, dense population by New Hampshire standards, higher income, college degree. These were not areas where Sanders did great There's a lot of vote here, so that's something big we're looking for at 8 o'clock when the polls close. How is that area right on the Mass New Hampshire line there by those interstates? How is that looking?
Also considered the outer Boston media market. That's where Senator Warren was optimistic she would find followers there. Chris Matthews in our Manchester bureau, who has been joined by a journalist there. Chris?
Yeah, we're here with Jim Bendel. Jim, you were talking about how some of the hanky-panky that goes on in the legislature in New Hampshire may have been voter suppression, especially against Bernie Sanders.
Well, the number I was really looking at were the youth vote, which was really down from where we thought it was going to be. In the polling, we thought it'd be about a quarter. This is like 11%. And then the mix-up between old and young has been really stunning. Now, a couple things could happen there. One, Bernie Sanders really wanted to drive that turnout. He closed, of course, his campaign last night with a huge thousands and thousands of person.
7,000 people, yeah.
Exactly, rally there to try to encourage him. He, A, may not have been able to convince him to vote. Or B, we may be seeing the impact of a new law in New Hampshire. I'm not going to get into the weeds of domicile versus all this, the clearing up of state law. Republicans thought they were technically clearing up a voter law. Democrats, however, see voter suppression, and what this law did was almost specifically go after college students who vote in this state. If you vote, you're a new voter, and you drive in this state, and you register to vote, you now have 60 days in which to register your car with the state, or they go after you. And so there's been a lot of, this has been tied up in the courts. It is law. Currently,
how does the difficulty in getting a driver's license, in-state driver's license, and registration of your car, how does that impact your ability to vote?
Well, the concern has been overall that this is sort of a poll tax, that previously, for example, again, Bernie Sanders won the state with 22% and on the backs of a lot of young voters in 2016. And they didn't have to go through this process. They show up, they can register to vote, they can pick a ballot, and they can leave. And now they have to sign an affidavit that they are going to be now a resident of New Hampshire. And if they're a resident of New Hampshire, then they have to get a driver's license, and then they have to get their car.
Okay, more hanky-panky going on. This has happened in Pennsylvania. Of course, in the Carolinas, you guys know it's a way of avoiding having to depend on voter opinion. You just make it harder to vote.
Yep.
It's always something. Chris Matthews, thank you so much. Vaughn Hilliard is in Nashua at Pete Buttigieg headquarters for us. But when we talked earlier, there was a lot of optimism, but not much data. What are the Buttigieg campaign folks saying about what they're seeing come in so far?
It's still hard to parse through these numbers and what we're looking at right now, Nicole. But what this campaign wanted to leave here tonight with was essentially setting up the framework in folks' minds around the rest of the country that this is a two-man race. Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg. The two of them essentially left Iowa in a tie. And based off of the results that are coming in right now, again, you're seeing Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg at the top. Of course, there are a lot of big question marks heading into Nevada and South Carolina, especially with voters of color as you move beyond. Pete Buttigieg is still in single digits in any polls outside of New Hampshire. The question, though, what they wanted to walk away with was this conviction, the ability to tell the rest of the country that they were able to draw in independents and Republicans. This campaign was able to do that in Iowa. And so far, from these initial exit polls that we're seeing here from New Hampshire, 45% of the electorate here that took part in the democratic process say that they're registered independent voters. That's slightly up from 4 years ago. This is also an electorate that considers itself more moderate than it did 4 years ago. So Pete Buttigieg and his campaign, they have said that they wanted to be able to contend to the rest of the country that they are worthy, that they are viable next November against Donald Trump because they are able to convince independents, more of those moderates, and as Pete Buttigieg calls them, disaffected Republicans, to come to the table. Remember, 4 years ago, Donald Trump won, or I should say Donald Trump lost New Hampshire by about 3,000 votes.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard at the Buttigieg headquarters. Thank you, Vaughn. Just to repeat, because we try to do this every election cycle, we have a decision desk in this network, in this building. They have no televisions in the room where they're working, so they can't see what the competition is doing. They can see us. And that's it. It's them and their computers. And we're not allowed to go in there and talk to them and bug them and say, hey, when do you think you're going to have a call in New Hampshire? They call no race before it's time. So our election call will emanate from that building, that room. John Lipinski, our election specialist, is in the at around the 9 p.m. on the clock. So Steve Kornacki We'll get a big wave of numbers at 8 o'clock, but not necessarily a call from the secret room. You have new numbers since we last spoke.
We've got a few that are coming in. I'm told, I'm going to show you this one first. This is the city of Claremont here, again, along the Connecticut River. And we said, keep your eye on the Connecticut River towns tonight. They border Vermont, generally the most liberal part of the state. Claremont was a bit of a wild card, is a bit of a wild card along the Connecticut River. This is a city where the average income is a lot lower, where the college plus percentage is a lot lower. Give it some perspective there. Sanders, though, with 100% in, has won Peterborough, 28-23. Klobuchar back at 21. Again, this is one of those places, I think, where it raises the question, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, how much are they costing each other here by basically fighting to a draw? If there's one candidate to choose from among these two, I'd be curious to see what that might look like. But again, Sanders getting the better of them in Peterborough. So again, statewide here right now, 13% in. We're just checking in. It's about a 2,500 vote and change advantage for Bernie Sanders. Translates to 7%. More Manchester just came in, I'm told. Let's take a look. Let's press that one more time. Let's press it a third time. I'm going to have to do it a fourth time. The city of Manchester, 58%. Okay, now we've got the majority of Manchester in. This is very good news for Bernie Sanders. What you're seeing here, he's opened up a double-digit lead over Pete Buttigieg. Klobuchar back at 18%. Again, Manchester, largest city in the state of New Hampshire. This is a place where, relative to the statewide in 2016, Sanders didn't do quite as well. He's leading by 13. In fact, I can show you in 2016, his margin was 14. Right now, with 58% in Manchester, he's running right near his margin over Hillary Clinton, but in a much bigger race. So we'll see what the rest of the vote in Manchester looks like. Again, some of these wards can be dramatically different than the others. We'll see if it tightens the gap. But right now, that, I would say, is an encouraging sign for the Sanders campaign. Again, what that does to the statewide total, it's where we were before I went into that. 2,500 votes and change. 13% reporting, 7-point advantage for Sanders over Buttigieg. Very close there between Buttigieg and Klobuchar, and about 20% of the state there, a lot of it right along the Mass-New Hampshire line, a lot of it sort of bedroom community towns due to close minutes from now. We will see if that changes the picture as well.
All right, it's getting exciting.
Yeah, I mean, what's so interesting, too, if you go back to 4 years ago, this is a little bit reminiscent of the Republican returns at this hour in the night. So you had Trump, and then when you divide the Trump alternative vote, as Steve Kornacki just added up the Klobuchar and Buttigieg vote, they far exceed, in that case it was Trump, in this case it would be Bernie, but it really does put to the Democrats a really interesting question, and I think it's what you were getting at. Does the race narrow in enough time to, if the party wants to go in a different direction than the Sanders vision for the party, do they have enough time to coalesce around an alternative? And I think that's where sort of we'll be talking about this night and its results for many, many, many more weeks.
And that includes when we come back from this next commercial break, we'll be joined by Rachel Maddow, and of course we're looking at the clock. What's our countdown to the top of the hour? 7:45, 4, 3, and you know the rest until we get polls closed, all of them statewide, and in our next wave of data and information and raw vote.
I'm your mother-in-law, and I like to question your every move. Like this left turn.
It's the next one.
You always drive this slow.
How did you make someone I love?
That must be why you're always so late.
I do not speed, and that's saving me cash with Drivewise.
Yeah, my son, he did say that you were the safe option.
And that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
So get Allstate.
Stop bossing.
Where good drivers save 40% for avoiding mayhem like me. It's my son's favorite color. You should try it. You always drive like an old lady.
You're an old lady.
So I needed legal advice. And I heard that my cousin's wife's sister's husband was a lawyer, so I called him. But he never called me back.
If your cousin's wife's sister's husband isn't a lawyer, call LegalZoom and we'll connect you with an attorney. LegalZoom, where life meets legal.
How do you think I want to change their tires? How are you copying me? Got it. How do you even write during homework? How does it know where to go? What's up, Mom? Are you serious? You got me tickets here? How do you get tickets?
I don't know if you're aware, but the world's gone to hell since you left. I need you for an important mission.
I'm a Russian agent, apparently.
I'll take my chances.
Don't let her out of your sight.
Back off! Put the weapon down!
Whatever she's in is because of me. I am not turning my back on her.
No more about my loyalty. I did what had to be done.
I'm bad. You're stronger than you know. So strong. You power through chronic migraine. 15 or more headache or migraine days a month. One tough mother. You're bad enough for Botox. Botox has been preventing headaches and migraines before they even start for almost 10 years and is the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine treatment. Botox is for adults with chronic migraine. 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more.
Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Go on with your bad self. You may pay as little as $0 for Botox. Ask your doctor about Botox for chronic migraine. You got this.
It's a familiar story. Allergies ruining your sleep and next day too. Taking Zysol at night relieves allergies while you sleep, so you wake refreshed. Plus, it works faster than Claritin and on first dose provides the same relief as Zyrtec at nearly half the size. Be wise all. Take Zysol at night.
I'm standing on the mountain, about to fall. I'm running on the rooftops, 50 foot tall.
The 2020 Infiniti QX50. Lease the 2020 Infiniti QX50 for $399 a month at your local Infiniti retailer.
All right, that was our last break before the top of the next hour as we get down to business here, approaching the top of the 8 p.m. hour in the East. Polls will be closing across New Hampshire. The final sprint for voters. Exit polls suggesting that a lot of voters made up their minds at the very last minute, meaning there's an element of suspense as we get the next tranche of raw results. And because this is one of those days that ends in a Y, we are also following another breaking story tonight out of the Justice Department. So you have Brian Williams, you got Nicole Wallace, you got Rachel Maddow now joining our conversation, and you get to explain this one.
Today is another one of those split-screen days in American history, one of those days that you will tell your kids and your grandkids what you were doing when this unspooled. I mean, we've got this crucial primary unfolding in real time right before our very eyes, while simultaneously a rule of law crisis, what some people are calling a rule of law emergency, is unfolding in the incumbent administration. All 4 veteran prosecutors who had been handling the Roger Stone case today resigning one after the other in a story that has unspooled dramatically over the course of the day. The resignations coming, of course, after the Justice Department at the highest levels intervened to overturn the prosecutor's recommendation for a serious 7 to 9 year-long prison term for the president's longtime friend, Roger Stone, following public tweets by the president in which that recommended sentence was criticized in harsh tones by the president last night. The Stone case is being handled out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. 1 week ago, Attorney General Bill Barr installed his close longtime aide as the U.S. Attorney in that office, replacing the former U.S. Attorney whose name was Jesse Liu. amid uncertainty about Lou's role in this current scandal and a lot of uncertainty about her ouster at the Justice Department. Tonight, Axios was first to report that Lou's nomination to another Trump administration job has tonight suddenly been yanked. Now, in order to get confirmed in that job, Jessie Liu was scheduled for a confirmation hearing in the United States Senate the day after tomorrow. With all of this scandal coming out of the office that she appears to have just been ousted from, the prospect of her testifying in an open hearing in the Senate in 2 days may have been too much for the White House to not try to stop. It is hard to see how all of these dots, the president's friendship with Roger Stone, his criticism of the recommended sentence for Stone, the newly minted U.S. attorney hand-chosen by Attorney General Barr, now this radical move in the Stone case, the cascading resignations of career prosecutors apparently in protest of that move. It's hard to not see it as connected. The former chief of counterintelligence at the Justice Department, David Laufman, is one of the people who has been sounding the alarm in the loudest possible terms about this crisis today. David Laufman saying online today, quote, "We are now truly at a break glass in case of fire moment for the Justice Department."
Nicole Wallace, we're under a half
I mean, when
minute.
she puts it like that,
Sorry.
listen, no, look, that's exactly right. It's the right way to put it. I spoke to two former Justice Department officials, both of whom served in the time of Trump before I came on the air, who described it not in dissimilar terms. And these are not people prone to panic or hysteria. They're the kind of people who appreciate individuals like these four career prosecutors who stayed to protect the department. And I think there are two parts of this story where it gets a lot more dire, even from this moment. One, if you rewind the tape, why did Jessie Liu leave? So here are the cases that are in that office. And I think most people understand because we've sort of all gone to law school, but there are a lot of sensitive cases there. The Flynn case is there. Andy McCabe's prosecution was there. And, you know,
Roger
the
Stone case
was
right?
there.
Yeah.
So it makes a whole lot of sense. You talked about connecting the dots. They're direct lines at this point.
It's one of two stories we're covering tonight. Here's the other. It's 8 o'clock Eastern time, and the decision desk is allowing us to say about the New Hampshire primary at this hour, Sanders leads in a race that is too early to call. It can only mean one thing for us. Over to that board and our man, Steve Kornacki. Steve.
All right, here we go. As you mentioned, about 14%, so early, but it is about a 2,500 vote advantage that Sanders has over Buttigieg here. Translates to 6 percentage points. Again, 8 p.m. means we are waiting on about 20% of the state in terms of 20% in terms of turnout. We think will come from the places, the cities and towns that are closing right now. That includes Nashua, second largest city in the state. Oh, look at this. They close. Okay, this is Salem. This was actually a 7 p.m. closing, but this just came in. Salem is a town. You shop if you're from Massachusetts in tax-free Salem, New Hampshire. This is a bedroom community here. Rockingham Park used to be here. Pete Buttigieg has won this one. Take a look here in 2016. This is notable because, again, I say Sanders won basically every city and town in New Hampshire in 2016. So to only have won by 7 in 2016 said he's going to be in a little bit of trouble in Salem tonight. He did not carry it. Pete Buttigieg carried it. This is a bedroom community, essentially, just on the other side of the Massachusetts border. Klobuchar right here with 18%. Again, this is good news for Pete Buttigieg to win it. But I think one of the questions that's being raised here as these numbers start to accumulate is, did Klobuchar rising here clearly at the end and getting to 18% in this particular town? I think Buttigieg would like to be beating Sanders by more here. This is a place demographically favorable to the non-Sanders candidates. And I think when you have an opportunity like this on this map, you maybe want to be beating him by more than 4 points to offset what he's been able to do in some other places. So it's good news for Buttigieg to win Salem, but perhaps he wanted to win Salem by a little bit more. Take a look here again, statewide. What we're looking at, just doing the math here, 2,504 votes separating them, 14% in. We are waiting. I thought Salem at first was one of those 8 p.m. closings to 7 p.m. So again, we're waiting on those 8 p.m. closings around Nashua. Again, those are a lot of those places that are closing right now are like Salem. Demographically, you would say they are probably favorable to the non-Sanders candidates. So let's take a look what we just saw in Salem. Let's take a look if that replicates itself in these other places. And just taking a quick look while I'm here, Manchester is still at the same place in terms of return. That's Canterbury North and Concord at 50%.
Steve, don't move a muscle and coming right back to you, but I wanted to pass this along to our viewers. NBC News confirming that Andrew Yang will tonight suspend his campaign. This is an announcement that came out right at poll closings. You see he is in the right-hand list. He is just north of write-ins after a long time in the race, after establishing the Yang Gang that would go anywhere, do anything for their candidate. And after, of all things, running on the beauty of math, unable to crack what is an early number of 3%, there are his supporters waiting for what will be a solemn appearance, I am guessing, at campaign headquarters tonight. Yang suspending his effort. Steve, did you just get numbers while I've been yammering?
Oh, I talk too loud in here sometimes.
No.
What we have that we can show you is it's the updated exit poll. I just want to kind of close the loop on this because we said when we first got the exit polls, they would be updated. So we've got a better sense of the electorate right now with an updated exit poll. And I think one thing that jumps out at this number of 18 to 29-year-olds in this New Hampshire electorate tonight sits at 12%. Remember, in the first wave of the exit polling, it was 11. In 2016, it was 19. And one of the questions was, when we got subsequent waves of exit polling, was that 11 going to move way up close to 19? Obviously, when you look at these splits on age, that's probably going to favor Sanders if it does. It's only moved from 11 to 12, though. And again, we've got a lot more of that exit poll filled out now. The 65 plus has come down to 27. It was at 33 earlier. But again, not as much of an 18 to 29-year-old electorate, certainly as you saw in Iowa. Doesn't look like it's moving up dramatically towards that 19. And yet, Sanders still leads this thing statewide right now. I'm just looking to see if we've got any more vote in. Well, I've been talking, see if we can update that at all. Still where we were when I stopped. But again, they're about 2,501. That's the lead for Sanders right now. I just say one of the things we're seeing in this exit poll, I don't think I have the graphic yet, is generally Sanders just kills it among the youngest voters, 18 to 29 that we're just talking about. Generally, he is an afterthought among 65 plus. You're very much seeing that dynamic. Sanders doing way better with younger, way worse with older. He's got, I would say, looking at these results, a little bit more of a pulse, a little bit more than we're used to seeing with the older side of voters here. So that might be helping him a little bit here in New Hampshire. And you can see just a little more vote coming in right there. Again, a little less than 2,500 separating them. We're going to take a look here, see where that came from.
Okay, Steve, we'll get you oxygen and nourishment. Quickly introduce our house guests here. Everyone is here with us. Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, Senator Claire McCaskill, Jason Johnson. And let's not forget Manchester, our kind of portable NBC News election bureau. Every 4 years in Manchester, the two Chris's, Matthews and Hayes, holding down the fort. Quickly, to you gentlemen, just what do you make of what you've seen with the knowledge that we might have to go back to Steve Kornacki at any moment?
I mean, the thing that strike me when we look at that board, that big board with Steve Kornacki, is that Joe Biden is physically not on the board.
Right.
His head is cut in half at the bottom of that. And I mean, I got to say, I think it's hard, even as early as October or November, if you go back and say he's going to maybe finish 4th or 5th in New Hampshire, everything about this race for the last year has been shaped by Joe Biden's presence in it. It shaped who was able to stay in the race and who wasn't, including Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, who was able to get a real look and who wasn't, including Steve Bullock and Michael Bennet. All of the space taken up by Joe Biden, and we are now in the second contest that we're looking at, and he came in 4th in Iowa and is looking not very strong tonight.
Okay, let's go through the list of people who didn't run because Biden did. Ready?
Yeah.
You're first.
Terry McAuliffe is one.
Probably John Kerry.
John Kerry, maybe, yeah.
Probably Sherrod Brown.
Yep.
So that leaves that moderate wing, that moderate lane, we've been calling it, the AFC, I've been calling it. To win a Super Bowl, you got to get into at least one of the conferences. You got to win. And now tonight, it looks like there is a battle for that lane. It's between Klobuchar and Buttigieg, based upon her performance Friday night.
But again, that is true, I think. But they don't have a ground game in Nevada, as far as I can tell. Not much of one.
Klobuchar doesn't.
No. They're going to. There's a fundraising issue. There's a capacity issue. I mean, and again, that would be totally different, but for the fact that Joe Biden has been occupying that space in this campaign. We've got this completely upside down world that we have now entered into.
And I go to that question you just got to, which is the question of where do you go from here? And Klobuchar, where do you go now? It's like Paul Tsongas coming out of here when he beat Bill Clinton here in '92. Where did he go? He didn't have a team anywhere else.
Right. That's
so
the
we
thing.
agree. And so
you got to have a national organization. You got to have national organization. Joe Biden's already up in South Carolina. Bloomberg and Steyer have the airways crowded with their ads. So they've got a tough organizational task ahead of them that Bernie Sanders does not, because he's up. He's got organization in all those states.
And Biden is now gone to basically the island off of China, where he thinks he can hold on against the mainland.
Well, he's down in South Carolina tonight. And again, I just want to say, I think the argument the Biden people make about the way this calendar works is correct. Yeah. That in the year 2020, Democratic Party is a diverse coalition, and to have these two states essentially have a veto.
Let me give a more positive view of the Biden campaign. Bernie has his Bernie people have been with him for all these years. 4 years they've been with him. But 25% hardcore, hard to move. Elizabeth Warren learned that. She couldn't move them away. She tried to imitate his policies, agenda, couldn't do it. Can Biden come back if he holds a huge chunk of the African-American vote? He's up to 60%. They are 60% of the vote down in South Carolina. Can he build that core back up the way that Bernie Sanders has built his core?
I just don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't know.
I'm going with maybe, Brian.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. At the start of our coverage, I warned our viewers we were going to have to cover more than one story, walk and chew gum tonight. This was a consequential day where the rule of law is concerned. That has not changed. Steve Kornacki, however, has new numbers in this other story we are covering tonight. Oh, by the way, the New Hampshire primary results. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, here you go. 15% in statewide against Sanders, continuing to lead by 2,500. It's a 5% margin over Pete Buttigieg. One important thing here that just happened, our decision desk monitoring these results. This is, in addition to seeing who has the most popular strength, it is a battle for delegates. There are 24 delegates that are up for grabs here in New Hampshire tonight. And our decision desk is now confident. Remember, to get delegates, you got to hit 15%. And there's 3 jurisdictions you can do it in. You can do it in the 1st Congressional District of New Hampshire, the 2nd Congressional District, or you can do it statewide. Our decision desk is now confident, looking at the returns and looking at the support Sanders has, that he will hit the threshold statewide and in CD1 and in CD2. And so as a result, he will have, according to our decision desk, at least 6 of New Hampshire's 24 pledged delegates that are up for grabs right now. Again, Sanders' strength right now, you've been seeing in these returns, running 5-6 points ahead of his nearest competitors. He'll get at least 15%. That's what it means to see him getting projected delegates right now. There are still 18 more up for grabs. Obviously, we've been saying we're waiting for this 8 p.m. vote to come in here. We're waiting for some big college towns like Hanover and Durham to come in. Here's an example of what a college town can do to change the mix a little bit. Take a look at what just came in. This is New London, New Hampshire. This is the home of Colby Sawyer College. What do you see here? You see Bernie Sanders in 3rd place. You see him down double digits. We said demographically places with a lot of college degrees, perhaps a little higher income. These are places that might be ripe for a Buttigieg or for a Klobuchar. And that's what you're seeing right here in New London. Buttigieg, Klobuchar combining for nearly 60%. Sanders stuck at 17%. But again, I've said this in a few other places tonight. Those spots where Sanders is most vulnerable demographically, if you're Buttigieg or if you're Klobuchar, you maybe want to be beating him by more. If you're Klobuchar, you want a chunk of what Buttigieg got. If you're Buttigieg, you want a chunk of what Klobuchar got, so you can build some more distance in those places from Sanders. Because again, right now, they are chasing him statewide. It's a margin now of almost 2,800 with 17% in.
All right, David Plouffe, who knows his way around New Hampshire. Bad day for the rule of law. We've established that much. Good night for who?
Well, Bernie Sanders, if he wins, obviously, I think he would have been able to survive a loss, but it looks like if that holds. And I think Mayor Pete and Amy come out of here with some momentum, for sure. I think we're going to have to look at turnout. I'm probably most interested in that as it relates to the general election. Do we like what we see there vis-a-vis Iowa? But again, I think Steve was talking about the national organization. I mean, the acceleration of this race is hard to capture, from this point on, really, because going out of New Hampshire, people aren't just going to be bunkering in Nevada and South Carolina. They're going to go to the Super Tuesday states.
Yeah.
And so who's got the ability? Now, so you look at those numbers. You got, as Steve just said, boy, maybe if Klobuchar hadn't had her surge, Mayor Pete would have won. But Bloomberg's going to enter the party. Biden and Warren might have some states where they're strong. So the sort of non-Sanders vote gets chewed up 4 or 5 ways. And so I think that's what we have to watch heading into Nevada and South Carolina. Does that settle it all? But Bernie has, if this holds, he has the balloons come down, gets to say he won the first vote, and gets to go on. And I think for Mayor Pete to go, well, 2, I guess, 1 in Iowa, 2 in New Hampshire. You know, who would have thought that even 60 days ago? So I think the question now is how...
16 days ago.
16 days ago.
I mean, the Pete story is a brand new story, and I think, to me, it reminds me so much, and this is my own PTSD, but it reminds me so much of the Republican primary in 16, where there was Trump, and he had his people, and they loved him, and they weren't going to leave him no matter what. But then the alternative to Trump was split up among Rubio and Jeb and
16 different candidates who were all the anti-Trump versus him.
And so I guess I just wonder, David Plouffe, what the sort of dividing lines are for those not Bernie campaigns.
This is such an important point, Nicole, because now the Republican rules are winner take all. But Trump didn't get north of 40% reliably till deep in the calendar. And if somebody had emerged as his main alternative, there might have been a chance to deny him or make it a lot closer. And so what's interesting when you look at it, it's a great night for Amy Klobuchar. Again, 5 days ago, who saw this coming?
Right.
But you look at who's got the most differentiation of the non-Sanders vote. Now, Bloomberg's got the pocketbook, but Mayor Pete's the young, fresh face. So you think he's got probably an ability, perhaps, if he can continue to catch lightning in a bottle, to be the person who becomes that stand-in. But boy, you know, can he put it together in Nevada, South Carolina? He's 1-2. You know, right now, based on polls, he could go much worse than that. So I think what's interesting tonight, though, is, you know, Andrew Yang's getting out. I mean, if Warren and Biden stay in, we've never seen this historically, that people who perform this poorly in the first 2 contests just say, on to the next one.
We've never had, is it true that we've never had an Iowa after which no one got out? I mean, getting Iowa was a little incoherent in terms of what the response was, and so maybe that was why. But nobody dropped out between Iowa and New Hampshire, which is crazy enough. Now we've got Andrew Yang dropping out basically at the bell on the night of New Hampshire. That's consequential in terms of the overall field, right? I mean, he's the non-white candidate in the field, and he's now out. And so in terms of the Democrats contending with diversity issues, this is a real thing.
We went from a mailing list.
Steve Kornacki, as heads hang among members of the Yang gang, he's getting out tonight, suspending his campaign. You have another round of new numbers.
Yeah, we've got some of these cities now. We're getting more voting. It's adjusting, you know, the statewide number there. It's 3,001 now. That's the lead for Sanders over Buttigieg. 1/5 of the state now reporting what just came in. We jumped to 80% reporting in Portsmouth. Again, liberal city there right near the main line, right at the main line. Bernie Sanders leading this thing by 4 over Buttigieg and Klobuchar, with most of that city in right now. How about this? We said Manchester. Remember, there was 58% in the last time we looked, and Sanders was up 13. Check it out now with 67% in, 2/3 of the biggest city in New Hampshire. Sanders has expanded that lead to 14 points. So we will see in the remaining wards if that shrinks. But that right now, honestly, you're looking at this entire state. That right now, if it were to hold like that, that's the best news on this map, besides the fact that he's leading statewide. That's the best single thing I've seen for Sanders on here. Also, again, look at right next door, Bedford, suburb, upscale, if you, a suburb of Manchester here, 100% in. Klobuchar, Buttigieg, more than half the vote between them, very closely divided, a narrow win for Klobuchar, Sanders back at 16%. I'm going to be repeating this a lot tonight. I have a feeling demographically this was very favorable to the non-Sanders. They got almost a perfect divide between the two of them of that vote. And in other words, neither one of them was able to build a massive lead over Sanders here and really make a dent in that statewide lead. Again, 3,000 there for Bernie Sanders statewide. Let's see Nashua. Let's see Hudson. Let's see the Massachusetts, New Hampshire line, but that is good news if you're Bernie Sanders for now.
And we add this because our viewers have seen this graphic at the bottom of the screen. We have determined that the closing order will include Sanders, Buttigieg, and Klobuchar. To show our homework here, I've just seen 1 gallon of highlighter fluid expended on the articles we are all reading. Some terrific journalism, including but not limited to the work of our own Carol Lee. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about DOJ and what this day meant to the rule of law.
My body is truly powerful.
I have the power to lower my blood sugar and A1C.
Because I can still make my own insulin. And Trulicity activates my body to release it, like it's supposed to. Trulicity is for people with type 2 diabetes. It's not insulin. I take it once a week. It starts acting in my body from the first dose.
Trulicity isn't for people with type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Don't take Trulicity if you're allergic to it, you or your family have medullary thyroid cancer, or have multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2. Stop Trulicity and call your doctor right away if you have an allergic reaction, a lump or swelling in your neck, or severe stomach pain. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis. Taking Trulicity with a sulfonylurea or insulin increases low blood sugar risk. Side effects include nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, belly pain, and decreased appetite, which lead to dehydration and may worsen kidney problems.
I have it within me to lower my A1C.
Welcome aboard. For a limited time, enjoy savings and free drinks during Celebrity Cruises Sail Beyond event.
When you shop with Wayfair, you spend less and get way more, so you can bring the vision to life. For small prices, you can build big dreams. Spend less, get way more. Shop everything home at Wayfair today.
It's time for the ultimate Sleep Number event on the Sleep Number 360 smart bed.
Can it help keep me asleep?
Absolutely. It senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable. Save 50% on the Sleep Number 360 limited edition smart bed, plus 0% interest for 24 months on all smart beds, only for a limited time.
These folks, they don't have time to go to the post office. They have businesses to grow, customers to care for, lives to get home to. They use Stamps.com. Print discounted postage for any letter, any package, anytime, right from your computer. All the amazing services of the post office, only cheaper. Get our special TV offer, a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to Stamps.com/try and never go to the post office again.
Hi, we're Warby Parker, an eyeglasses, sunglasses, and contacts brand. That's right, contacts, as in our very own comfortable, breathable, and affordable daily contact lens. Scout by Warby Parker, which also comes in an easy-to-carry, easy-to-store flat pack that uses about 80% less packaging than traditional contact packs. Warby Parker, we've got your eyes covered.
Following the candidates through the early voting states.
As you know, on the campaign trail, sometimes the venue is the message.
Understanding the inner workings of each campaign.
This is an issue that Senator Sanders says is a moral issue.
Talking to voters who will decide the election.
We need to have a candidate that we are passionate about.
That's what it means to be an NBC News road warrior.
Polls have been closed in New Hampshire for coming up on 21 minutes. There are your top three. NBC News is predicting that the closing order will include these three candidates. No projections or predictions from this news organization. Upper right-hand side of your screen, too early to call with 20% of the vote in.
And of course, since we have been covering this over the course of the last hour or so, there have been two major news stories that have broken. One is that Andrew Yang has suspended his campaign for the presidency. Nobody dropped out of the Democratic field after Iowa. We now do have someone dropping out as the polls close in New Hampshire. But the other breaking news story that has happened just in the past few minutes is news broken by NBC News, where the headline is this: Barr, meaning Attorney General William Barr, takes control of legal matters of interest to Trump, including Stone sentencing. This has just been published at NBCnews.com by Carol Lee Kendallanian and Peter Alexander. And the bottom line of this new reporting from NBC News is that, as suspected and feared by many people commenting on and observing today's developments, as 4 prosecutors quit rather than apparently accede to the government's decision to backtrack on its sentencing recommendation for the president's friend, Roger Stone, as these 4 prosecutors, Michael Morando, Adam Jed, Aaron Zelinsky, and Jonathan Kravis, all quit today. NBC News reports that, in fact, as feared, those resignations come after Attorney General William Barr and other senior Justice Department officials intervened to try to make Roger Stone's sentence more lenient. NBC further reporting that Attorney General William Barr and other senior Justice Department officials have also intervened in the case of Michael Flynn. Now, the backstory here is that we have seen some strange and sort of unexplained doings in the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. over the past couple of weeks. The D.C. U.S. Attorney was a woman named Jessie Liu. We learned somewhat suddenly a couple of weeks ago that Liu was being replaced. Now, she was being put forth for another job within the Trump administration, a Treasury Department job, but she was being replaced in her office somewhat suddenly and somewhat out of the chain of command by a new acting U.S. Attorney who was coming directly from Attorney General William Barr's office. Well, since that has happened, all around that time, we have seen prosecutors working on the Michael Flynn case reverse an earlier recommendation that he should get prison time. Just in the past 24 hours, we have seen prosecutors recommend that Roger Stone get prison time. The president publicly criticized that, and then the Justice Department, in what is believed to be an unprecedented act, the Justice Department withdrawing that recommendation to the judge and these prosecutors quitting in response. It should also be noted that this U.S. Attorney's Office is the one that's been handling the case of former Deputy Director and former Acting Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe. When the president fired James Comey as FBI Director, Andrew McCabe stepped up and became the acting director of the FBI. He made a number of key decisions around the counterintelligence and criminal investigation of the president and his campaign, and the president has been gunning for him ever since. NBC has been reporting that the president has been calling for Andrew McCabe to be imprisoned. That case is still before this same U.S. Attorney's Office that has seen all of this turmoil.
Nicole Wallace.
So in my hour today at 4 o'clock, Donald Trump was speaking, and we didn't take it because he was saying the sorts of nonsense that he says all the time about the Justice Department. But I read the transcript, and there's something worth sort of reminding ourselves, because with Trump there are always patterns, and the answers are always said out loud. They're never hidden. He's not smart enough to be sneaky about these things. He smeared the Mueller campaign anew.
Yep.
And if you look at all of this effort, it is to not just smear the Mueller campaign, it's to erase it. It's to forget it ever existed. Because what did the Mueller prosecutors do? They investigated crimes. And I think Lisa Page actually broke some news in that interview with you when you asked about the counterintelligence investigation. She said that really wasn't pursued so much by Mueller. What Mueller did was look at crimes, and where there were crimes, he investigated them and sought to prosecute them. They are seeking, Donald Trump and William Barr, to erase all of the crimes that were prosecuted by Mueller's team, and there is no other way to say it. They are seeking to erase a chapter that Donald Trump was always embarrassed by, always felt exposed by, and that happened to reveal many of the people around him as felons.
Now, with the NBC News reporting, and the Washington Post shortly thereafter has confirmed and published similar reporting, with this confirmation that, in fact, Attorney General William Barr is intervening in these individual prosecutions of these people close to the president, as the president is talking about these things publicly and contesting these prosecutions. I mean, there's no subtlety here. This is all laid bare.
Back to the story that supplied our motif for this evening. Some breaking news at the board with Steve Kornacki. Steve, what do you have?
Okay, take a look here again. Statewide, with nearly a quarter of the vote now in, Sanders continuing that lead. It's about 3,114. That's his margin over Buttigieg, who's in second. Buttigieg now opening up a few-point advantage over Klobuchar. But take a look. I've only been focusing on these top three because they're the only ones who've been really in double digits. Warren sitting here at 9%. Joe Biden at 9%. You go down Steyer, Gabbard, sort of rounding out near the bottom there. Why I show you Warren and Biden is because if you remember a few minutes ago, I told you our decision desk had projected that they were confident that Bernie Sanders was going to meet the delegate threshold. Trying to get that loaded up here. I'm having trouble loading it up, so let me just tell you. Our decision desk, here it is. It's finally up now. Our decision desk is confident that Bernie Sanders will hit the threshold, the 15% threshold, in both of New Hampshire's congressional districts and statewide, and that he will get at least 6 of the state's 24 pledged delegates. Our decision desk is also now confident that both Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden will not meet that 15% threshold in either congressional district or statewide, and as a result, that they will be shut out of pledged delegates in the state of New Hampshire tonight.
All right, Steve Kornacki, thank you. Andrea Mitchell, who is alongside Chris Matthews in our Manchester Bureau, has fresh reporting on something, Andrea, you and I talked about in the 11 o'clock hour last night, which was kind of a sad plot line to all those in the circle of Joe Biden and involved in the campaign.
Indeed, and people inside the Biden campaign are trying to be as optimistic as they can, talking about South Carolina, where you know he went tonight, leaving precipitously, very quickly from New Hampshire. But now they saw the handwriting here that he was not going to get a single delegate out of New Hampshire, as we've just been reporting from our decision desk. It's remarkably grim also for Elizabeth Warren, and they're trying to say, well, it's even worse for her than it is for us because she is the neighbor from Massachusetts and she doesn't have a viable alternative. They can at least say they still have hopes of relying on that African-American vote in South Carolina, despite the shock just in the last 24 hours of seeing Mike Bloomberg get this big surge in African-American support in the Quinnipiac national poll to the disadvantage of Joe Biden. Exactly. Bloomberg going up 22 points and Biden going down by exactly the same amount. So they are obviously not happy with these results, but they still say that they have a narrative if they can squeak it out in South Carolina. If they cannot in South Carolina, they said, especially this one advisor I just spoke to, that's another story.
Is this about winning the nomination to run against President Trump, or is this about saving his pride?
Well, this is about becoming the nominee. And if you don't become the nominee, there is no pride for Joe Biden. For the former sitting vice president, 8-year vice president, who got into this race late and agonized over getting into it, perhaps too late, but did not show the kind of fire. And what we're also seeing is a lot of dissatisfaction with his performance on this job.
The thing that I have really been struck with, and it's bothered me personally because I've tried to get interviews with him, his campaign and he, the candidate, decided not to do a single Sunday television program. All the most important ways to reach millions of people, lead the news that week, and they chose not until this Sunday when they finally agreed to do one of the programs. What, did they think that was a smart strategy?
I think that they sheltered him way too much. There's going to be a lot of after-action reporting on this, but the bottom line is Joe Biden did not do well here, and there's a lot of explaining to do.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you both, and this pertains to where you are. Manchester numbers just came in to Steve. Steve?
Yeah, we just got some numbers here. I'm checking Manchester to see if we've got, with this. I got to zoom in a little bit here. Let's try Manchester. We're sitting at 67% in Manchester. The one I want to show you that we just got most of the city in is right here. We talked about Dover. Right next door is Rochester. Again, you're talking about older, more blue-collar cities, places that I think once upon a time Joe Biden thought he'd do very well in. Bernie Sanders, with 83% in now in the city of Rochester, is leading this thing over Buttigieg. Klobuchar back at 19. And again, Biden sitting there at single digits. Warren in single digits. What that's done, what the big vote batch we just got from Rochester has done, it's allowed Sanders to expand that lead a little bit, ever so slightly statewide, up now to about 3,362, I think that adds up to. So again, Sanders continuing to lead. I've been teeing this up and I've been watching, and I'll bring them to you as soon as I can. Anything we get from this border, this densely populated New Hampshire-Massachusetts border, if there's a shot for Buttigieg to close that gap, if there's even a shot for Klobuchar to catch Buttigieg, these places right here, Nashua, places around there like Hudson, Pelham, Wyndham, Londonderry, Derry, those are going to be key. So we're waiting on those. We still haven't got any returns there. But again, Sanders right now, an advantage there of about 3,300 statewide, 5 points.
Okay, good time to announce that my family and I have launched a Go Fund Steve campaign. We're going to get some new technology post-World War II. They've made a lot of advances in these boards, and we think he deserves it.
It's a touch screen that does not like being touched.
Right.
So it's
awkward.
Thank you. It doesn't, it's awkward. And Steve's so nice.
So what have we learned in Steve Kornacki's bailiwick?
Well, I mean, obviously, I have learned humility at this time of the night for any contest that we're watching with live results. And so I feel like at this point, we should not project beyond the 27% of the vote that we've got in. But these are nights where expectations are everything, and your momentum is defined on a curve. And so if you came in expecting to win, and you won, that's great. Then people start looking at how much you won by. But if you came in and people are expecting you to do 4th or 5th and you did 2nd or 3rd, well, that can be sometimes an even bigger story. I do think that one of the things that's been sort of underappreciated and underreported here is the cash burn rate for these candidates and whether or not the actual just cash resources to continue is going to start to come into play, because we're heading not just toward Nevada and South Carolina, but about 5 minutes after South Carolina is Super Tuesday. And if you're not sitting on a mountain of money at that point, there just isn't the possibility of competing at the highest level.
I also wonder why Democrats aren't happier. It seems like, and I have been saying this next to Brian for a week, the Pete Buttigieg win in Iowa seemed like a huge political story, that if you liked Bernie, you had someone in that lane, and if you liked someone else, you had someone really promising to do really well there. If you like Bernie, he seems to be in position to do really well tonight. And if you want someone else, you've got 2 fresh faces in Klobuchar and Buttigieg. Why aren't Democrats happier?
Because Trump is so bad every day.
I feel that. That's how I feel. But you guys are freaking me out.
Because lots of people don't think either of these people can win.
Is that it?
I mean, that's the issue. Brian mentioned earlier, you talked about the candidate. The key part of the candidate is at the end of the movie where the guy says, what do we do now after he won, right? I'm looking at Amy Klobuchar. Let's say she has a great night. She comes in 3rd. She gets 23%. But what do I do now? I didn't think I was going to go this far. She doesn't have the money. She doesn't have the resources. She can't compete in Super Tuesday.
Right, to Rachel's point, it might be like a 2-week parade, right?
If she gets a tremendous amount of money, that's great. I also think this, and this is a key thing we'll look at with Bernie and how his success goes. You look at Andrew Yang dropping out. Andrew Yang had a very, very intense following. It never blew up, but he had an intense following. He had Dave Chappelle and Donald Glover who endorsed him. He had a whole lot of high-profile stuff. It'll be interesting to see if his supporters go to Bernie or if they just drop out of the system, right? Because his support was very Bernie-like, where it's like, Andrew Yang is the only reason I've got involved in this process. If those people just decide they don't want to show up anymore, that's a bad sign for Democrats overall. They need to be able to get the people who've been brought in to go to another candidate.
Go ahead. No, just back to New Hampshire. So I think there's going to be a lot of focus appropriately on, wow, did Klobuchar's surge cost Mayor Pete? But you look at what's happening in Manchester, where you would have expected Biden to do better.
Yeah.
Warren fading, probably Bernie picked up a lot of those votes. So he also benefited from the fade from Biden and Sanders. So it's interesting. That dynamic is important to watch going forward, because it may not play out like it did in New Hampshire elsewhere.
In our exit polls, 6 out of 10 voters said the most important thing was electability. But another number jumped out at me. 30% of the people that responded to our exit polls said that if the nominee is a woman, it would make it harder to beat Donald Trump.
Wow.
Now that is not good news.
That's not good news. It's not good news because of that perception.
Because of that perception.
Yeah. Well, and Nicole, back to your question on panic. I mean, I think whoever comes out of this will look stronger than anyone look. But, you know, there's a New Hampshire poll this week, I forget who did it. 2/3 of New Hampshire Democrats said they'd rather have the planet Earth be destroyed by a meteor than Donald Trump winning election. I mean, the panic and the paralysis is high.
We have news on 2 fronts. The campaign starts looking a bit like a nature special at this stage, and we had no defections after Iowa. Michael Bennett has just dropped out of this race. So the herd thins. He's announcing it to his supporters, which include James Carville right now. As tempted as we are to go into that room, Nashua just came in on Steve's map. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, we've really been building up Nashua in this area, so we got almost half of Nashua. Again, this is a city right across the Massachusetts line. Route 3 goes right through there, the Pheasant Lane Mall. Nashua, 44% in. And again, this is crucial for Bernie Sanders. If this holds when the rest of Nashua comes in, he's leading Pete Buttigieg here, 29-25. Klobuchar at 18. Second largest city in the state of New Hampshire. Bedroom, it's a city, also a bedroom community in some ways for Massachusetts. And you see here in 2016, the margin for Sanders in Nashua was only 9 points. He won 22 statewide. So there was some opportunity in Nashua, in big, densely populated Nashua, for his opponents potentially to overtake him, get an advantage. If this holds, though, and Sanders is able to win Nashua, that's going to be a very encouraging sign for him in terms of trying to hold on to that statewide lead, which now sits at, let's see here, he is now nearly 4,000 votes ahead statewide. That is 3,983 vote lead statewide for Bernie Sanders. It's 5 points. 1/3 of the vote is in. What you just saw in Nashua is a big part of it. I'm being told, if I'm hearing this correctly, all of Rochester, all of the city of Rochester is now in. Again, Bernie Sanders winning here in Rochester, a 5-point margin over Pete Buttigieg. That also seems to have boosted his statewide total. So those are encouraging signs for Sanders. We'll continue to see the rest of Manchester. I am just checking. We're 83% here. Okay, so this is one thing we were wondering in Manchester. We were at 67% the last time we checked in. We've got one more batch that'll come in after this. The margin for Sanders has shrunk from 14 to 11. These late reporting wards in Manchester might be a little bit more from the sort of the outer part of Manchester, where it's a little bit more, again, sort of bedroom suburb, basically. 11% here. Sanders leading Buttigieg. Again, 10%, 11%, 9%. If Sanders is winning Manchester by that much, if he's able to win Nashua, we'll see what happens. Those are incredibly encouraging signs for his campaign to be able to hold on to that lead. So let's see what happens when more Nashua comes in. Again, waiting on those big towns right along the Massachusetts border. But yeah, Sanders up 5 right now.
And that's the big story thus far, the lead that we know of for Bernie Sanders. Another break for us. We're back after this.
If you looked at America like a bird and that was all you knew, would you really understand it with just that point of view? We've got a different way to look at it from right here on the ground. We don't just see United States, we see United Towns. We're grateful for what you bring and all the sparks you've shown and the thousands of towns that we get to call home.
Excuse me. Do you mind being a motor?
What could be better than being a motor? The real question is, do you mind not being a motor?
I do. For those who were born to ride, there's Progressive.
Do you have concerns about mild memory loss related to aging? Prevagen is the #1 pharmacist-recommended memory support brand. You can find it in the vitamin aisle in stores everywhere. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
Why do hot dogs taste better with Bush's baked beans?
Because opposites attract, Duke. The savory and sweet flavor contrast of hot dogs and baked beans brings out the best in each other.
It's like my good looks and your good personality.
Thanks, buddy.
Bush's baked beans. Savory loves sweet.
I gotta say, I need a break. And I've been thinking, I've been dreaming about it all day. I get it all, I get it my way. Everybody say, oh my, oh my.
He's been a leader throughout the country for the past 12 years. Mr. Michael Bloomberg is here.
Leadership in action. Mayor Bloomberg and President Obama worked together in the fight for gun safety laws, to improve education, and to develop innovative ways to help teens gain the skills needed to find good jobs.
At a time when Washington is divided in old ideological battles, he shows us what can be achieved when we bring people together to seek pragmatic solutions.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
For small businesses, payroll is complex and time-consuming, and mistakes can mean tax trouble. Sure Payroll makes it easy to pay employees and file federal, state, and local taxes, and accuracy is guaranteed with full service plans. All done online in minutes, and with award-winning support, even on weekends and evenings. So spend more time for your small business and less time on payroll and taxes. To learn more and get a free 1-month trial, visit surepayroll.com now or call 844-SURE-PAYROLL.
Oh, hello. Casper is having a sale. Now you can save 10% on a Casper mattress for a limited time. So don't let another second go by. Grab one while you can and try not to hit snooze. Save 10% on an award-winning Casper mattress and try it for 100 nights, risk-free, with free shipping and returns. Visit Casper.com today.
So the results are still coming in from across the state, but right now it is clear
that Senator Sanders and Mayor Buttigieg had strong nights. And I also want to congratulate my friend and colleague, Amy Klobuchar, for showing just how wrong the pundits can be when they count a woman out. Our campaign is best positioned to beat Donald Trump in November because we can unite our party.
The remarks tonight, partial remarks by Elizabeth Warren. Here's what we're looking at. NBC News is projecting that the final shakeout will include, in some order, Sanders, Buttigieg, and Klobuchar, but not Warren in the top three. Polls have been closed now for 42 minutes in the state of New Hampshire. I'm looking at Steve Kornacki. I'm looking at David Plouffe. David, if you ran the place, what would you say to the candidates remaining in this race tonight? What would you say to the party?
Well, my interest in is who can actually win the nomination.
Yep, there is that.
And so even Amy Klobuchar had a great night. It's quite possible this is the best night of the entire campaign for her. Yeah. Because she's got to now put together a national campaign overnight. I live in California now. My ballot came to my home yesterday. Like, people are voting in Super Tuesday states. Right. They're organizing. Bloomberg's all over the airwaves. So I think I would just encourage us, and not just the party, just casual viewers of this process. What really matters is right now, coming out of tonight, you'd still rather be Bernie Sanders than anybody else.
But how is she running less of a national campaign than Pete Buttigieg?
Well, Buttigieg, my understanding is, has more staff there. He's shown more ability to raise money online. Right. So I think we're going to be able to see, because spending is public. Both digital and TV. Who's spending in these states? Who's reallocating their staff? Travel schedule gets super important right now because you can't be in all the Super Tuesday states. So where do you think you can go? And my view is not for momentum. None of these candidates. Does it matter on Super Tuesday? I won 2 states. So what? Thanks for playing. You can't be the nominee. Where can you get the delegates to become the nominee? So,
but we are looking at the field changing, right? We've seen Andrew Yang and Michael Bennet both drop out tonight. That leaves Tulsi Gabbard and Tom Steyer still at that end of the field, but we've seen 2 people drop out. With Joe Biden doing what appears to be poorly tonight in New Hampshire, that may cause a reckoning around both his campaign and his donors. If nationally, Democratic donors and Democratic voters are looking at a field that has Bernie at the top and that has Buttigieg and Klobuchar and Warren there contending with him, isn't it possible that Buttigieg and Warren and Klobuchar start to see the dynamics around their own race and their own cash flow situation change, simply because people are looking at this race turning out a way they didn't expect?
They might. But Biden's, maybe he'll surprise us and he'll drop out tonight, but I think he's got 18 days to see if he can win South Carolina. Sadly for him, even if he does that, he also doesn't have, of all of the major candidates, has had the most trouble raising money online. Right. So his operation in the Super Tuesday states is probably going to be the weakest of all. So I think that, Rachel, that's really an important question is somebody going to emerge out of this group with Bloomberg looming to be the person where most of the political support, the voting support, and the financial support goes? Or does it stay muddled? Again, we've never seen anything like this where people finish 4th or 5th in states and they just keep going on. And so what that means is for Super Tuesday, now maybe people will get out after Nevada or South Carolina, but that's, I think, and the other question I just say is, does Sanders grow his vote? If he can go from 28 to 30 or 35 in California and Texas, he's going to be super hard to stop. And I think so that's dependent on his ability to grow. But also, if all the non-Sanders votes getting carved up 4 or 5 ways, he could actually win the nomination, getting 32% of the vote.
And do you see him as having a national caliber campaign? Obviously, he's got more money than most of his rivals who aren't billionaires. But do you see him as having a scalable campaign in terms of winning?
He's got passionate grassroots volunteers. They've done this before. They probably have as better sense of the delegate game as anybody else. He's raised not quite a historic amount of money, but close to that. This will help him. So, yeah, he's the one person you could see on Super Tuesday. Who do you think will be viable in most congressional districts? Right now, you'd say Bernie Sanders is the only one. Now, in the next 18 days, you may say maybe Mayor Pete is able to do that, or Klobuchar. But he's the one person you'd say, he's coming out of Super Tuesday with delegates. The question is, how big is the delta, or will there be a delta between him and the rest of the field?
David Plouffe, who has been there and done that. Steve Kornacki at the board has new exit poll data on late breakers, late voters, late deciders, and new raw vote. Correct, Steve?
Yeah, and you're starting to see it look statewide here, more than a third in, and now it's 4 4 points between Sanders and Buttigieg, and now it's 4 points between Buttigieg and Klobuchar. So Sanders continuing to lead, Buttigieg getting some separation above Klobuchar. A reason for that we can show you. Nashua, again, we're second biggest city right across the line there from Massachusetts. We're now up to 2/3 in, and you can see Sanders continuing to lead here. That's very good news for him. Buttigieg has moved within 3 points of Sanders, but he's also outpacing Klobuchar here by 7 points. So Buttigieg in places like Nashua getting an advantage. Also, we told you at the start of the night that sort of the sweet spot in this state for Bernie Sanders in 2016 was all along the Connecticut River, all along the Vermont border, towns right around there. And notice, you see a lot of Sanders purple. There are a lot of places here that navy blue, that's the Buttigieg color on this map. He's making some incursions. A lot of these are small places, but he's making some incursions into what was staunch Sanders territory in 2016. So it's one of the reasons when you look statewide that Buttigieg has now been able to move into second place, 4 points ahead of Klobuchar. But I've been trying to get this in all night, and I keep forgetting to. Let me make sure I do it now because I think it tells a major story about why this happened tonight. It's our exit poll on the question. We showed you about half of the Democratic electorate said they decided in the final few days of this, and a lot of them said the debate was the reason. So take a look here. The last few days, how did they vote? Look at that. Again, half of the electorate said this is when they made up their mind. 28% of them went to Buttigieg. 23% of them went to Amy Klobuchar. Only 16 for Sanders, 8 for Warren, 12 for Biden. This is a quarter of the New Hampshire Democratic electorate right here in the final couple days opted for Buttigieg or opted for Klobuchar. And again, we've been talking about this. When you see Klobuchar and Buttigieg within single digits of Bernie Sanders, if you're Klobuchar, you're saying, why couldn't I have had 10% more of that? And if you're Buttigieg, you're saying, why couldn't I have had 10% more of that? There's a big chunk of the electorate. They're really split between the two of them.
Incompetence in Iowa is one of the reasons. I'll go ahead and say it. Hey, let's check in on the Sanders campaign headquarters. Shaq Brewster is our man covering that campaign. Shaq, how's it feel there?
Well, will be behind Senator Sanders. They loaded them on the riser behind me, and the room is starting to fill up. It was empty for a long time. More media here than supporters at one point. And what you're hearing from the campaign right now is not that much, but you're hearing a sense of feeling good. It's a cautious optimism. That's the same thing Senator Sanders told me earlier today, where he said, I'm feeling a little bit nervous. It's an election day, but I'm still feeling good about the overall picture. What we're seeing so far, and as I listen to Steve break down those results, and you hear the crowd cheering right now, there's some results coming in on some screens now. They cheer every time there's exit poll data, or they even count it down to the top of the hour with the close of the polls. But the point I wanted to make was when I was listening to Steve break down those numbers, it was very clear coming out of Iowa, there was a strategy by this campaign to shift from Vice President Biden towards Mayor Pete Buttigieg. They started launching attacks. Senator Sanders read headlines connecting Mayor Pete to the billionaire class. What ended up happening afterwards was you also had other candidates in the race. Vice President Biden with that video connecting Pete and mocking his record as mayor. Amy Klobuchar had that strong debate performance. You had many of these candidates softening that rise in momentum that Mayor Pete had, and that was a clear strategy that you saw coming from the Sanders campaign. Now, one thing to note is as we continue to watch these results come in, Senator Sanders in 2016, remember, this is a state that he won. He did well in. He won it by 22 points, about a 60% margin that he had here. Based on the results we're seeing, he's not going to replicate that tonight. He is doing better than Elizabeth Warren, who is also a neighboring state senator, but he's still walking out of New Hampshire not with the same bump and not the same percentage that he had in 2016, but this is a good night. It could be a very good night for him, and right now you're seeing his supporters and his team kind of exuding that confidence at this point. Guys?
Shaq, thank you. And Garrett Hake is over at Amy Klobuchar headquarters. Garrett.
Hey, Brian, it's a pretty celebratory mood here, too. Folks are starting to migrate over from the bar into the main room here, and they're happy with the results they're seeing. This is mathematical proof of something that Klobuchar's campaign has been saying that they have seen really for the last couple days, this momentum, the Klobo charge, the Klobomentum, whatever you want to call it. Now they've got some data to back it up here. Even if this numbers stall out, they finish in third place. That's still a significant improvement from where they were in Iowa, and they are going to try to build on it. But that's the challenge challenge for Klobuchar. She now has to build the plane in midair. The campaign only has about 30 staffers in Nevada. A lot of them moved over there from Iowa. They just went up with what'll end up being a 7-figure ad buy in Nevada as they try to get her introduced in the state, introduced in South Carolina. Her numbers have not been good up till this point with African-American voters, but we saw it again and again and again today at polling places. Folks coming out telling me they decided at the last minute, oftentimes in the booth, to pull the lever for Amy Klobuchar. A lot of them women, a lot of them highly educated women, which we're seeing reflected in the exit polls. All of those positive signs for her, but we'll find out, I think, fairly quickly here whether Klobuchar can turn this momentum into something real, or if she becomes like John Kasich, who, in an interesting historical footnote, stood in this same ballroom when he came in a surprise second place back in 2016. Does she become a Kasich-like candidate, or someone who can build on what is unquestionably a success for her campaign tonight if these numbers hold, and turn it into something real that continues down the line? And that I just don't think we're going to have answers to anytime soon.
Garrett Haake, thanks. Joe Biden is going to speak here shortly. The problem is he's going to do it in South Carolina. There's our own Mike Memoli. And Mike, as you know, you've been listening to the coverage. You got to look pretty far down the list of Dems to find Joe Biden, which in itself is still quite a shock.
Yeah, Brian, safe to say that when I woke up this morning in Manchester, New Hampshire, I didn't think I'd be ending this day in Columbia, South Carolina. But it's also safe to say that when Joe Biden got in this race 9.5 months ago, he didn't think he was going to be looking at back-to-back fourth-place finishes in Iowa and New Hampshire, potentially even worse, depending on how these numbers stack up. But that's the reality that the Biden campaign finds themselves in. They're trying to sort of downplay this no-worries mentality here. Anita Dunn telling our colleague Alex Seitz-Wald that for all the hyperventilating that we're going to see about where Biden stands at this point, this is what they always expected. The problem with that, of course, is that Joe Biden invested an awful lot of time in Iowa and New Hampshire. I just got the numbers from my colleague on the beat, Mariana Sotomayor. 21 trips to Iowa, 11 trips to New Hampshire, only 7 trips to Nevada, the next in the order, 8 trips here to South Carolina. If this is his firewall, he hasn't necessarily been maintaining it. Perhaps, as one top Democrat in the state said, there's an argument to be made that he's been taking the state for granted. So that's why, in anticipation of a potentially bad night in New Hampshire, they rushed down here, wanted to plant that seed. The number of strengths Biden brought into this race as sort of the leading, practical, accomplished, moderate in the race, the heir of the Obama legacy, the leading Democrat likely to beat Donald Trump, all of those have been chipped away with his weak performances here. The bedrock of his support otherwise has been African-American voters. He believes he still has a chance. The Biden campaign telling me tonight that as long as there's still a little bit of a muddled picture here with a 1, 2, 3 evenly matched at the top of the ticket, they believe they still have a path here as more diverse states begin to vote. The big question going forward, of course, is do they have the resources to compete? Earlier today when Biden was visiting a polling place, I asked him about some of those ads we've seen on the airwaves from Mike Bloomberg that feature him and President Obama. It makes it look like almost they were working together in the White House. Biden actually, in a candid moment, as we expect from the former vice president, said, if I had the money, I would be putting those ads up too, Brian.
Mike Memoli in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're about to hear from the candidate in a state other than the one he's running in tonight. Rachel Maddow, as if to supply what you and I always talk about, the split screen days we often have to cover.
Yeah.
While the president of the United States is attacking a federal judge appointed to the bench for life, we have this as a backdrop, New Hampshire, as if to underscore the stakes that the likes of David Plouffe keep repeating to the party faithful.
That's right.
There is one way to accomplish this.
Since the polls have closed in New Hampshire, we have seen NBC News and then the Washington Post and then the New York Times, all front page stories about what is going on in Washington, which is, I think, the biggest rule of law day that we have had in the Trump administration. This is the kind of day, I mean, short of the president defying a court order, which I think is the clear constitutional crisis that I think a lot of people have been fearing and predicting from this president. This is the one step down from that, but right next to it, which is the president, as being reported by all these news organizations, through his attorney general, intervening in active criminal cases being overseen by career prosecutors to favor his political allies. And so that being reported out tonight, it being reported not as a scandal, but just the way Washington works now. Seeing these 4 prosecutors resign today, wondering if there will be additional Justice Department officials or line prosecutors who will step down because of this, wondering what accountability the Congress may try to impose by this. I mean, obviously it creates stakes for the general election in November that are all the more stark. The Democrats have to go through their process in order to pick who they want to run for them. I don't know how this affects that contest. Obviously, Claire, what you were saying earlier about just the stakes being all about how bad Donald Trump is right now. I mean, this is a milestone day.
It is. And I just got a text from a former U.S. attorney who said, if my assistant U.S. attorney resigned because I overruled them on a decision, you could be damn sure I would be out explaining my reasons. The silence speaks volumes. So basically what this person is saying, who is in the Department of Justice as a U.S. attorney, the fact that no one is explaining why the guidelines were inappropriate tells you all you need to know. Because the reason they're doing it is slimy, sleazy, dirty, horrible politics.
And it's not undercover. I mean, it's not. So when you say the guidelines were covered, so the sentencing recommendation for Roger Stone was reasoned in print, in writing, in a public court filing, saying this is the reasons that this case falls in this spot within the federal sentencing guidelines.
Correct.
It's explicit. The decision to rescind that guidance to the judge and instead say, judge, do whatever you want, is something that is not being carried out with any sort of fig leaf, with any sort of cover. It's the Attorney General intervening in cases for cases that benefit the president and that matter to the president and with which he is for which he is expressing his desires.
But if I could just button your point, I mean, I think the reason no one's explaining it is because we're in Act 2 of a 5-part play. I mean, close DOJ FBI watchers have said, Frank Figluzzi said on my show yesterday, watch for a Flynn pardon. And I mean, I think since we've been on the air, Trump's been tweeting about Manafort. The comments I referenced earlier trying to erase that the Mueller probe ever took place. I mean, I think that they haven't started explaining it because they want to explain the final production.
Quick break for us. Our coverage and our conversation continues at the top of the hour.
With my hepatitis C, I felt I couldn't be at my best for my family. In only 8 weeks with Mavyret, I was cured.
I faced reminders of my hep C every day.
I worried about my hep C.
But in only 8 weeks with Mavyret, I was cured.
Mavyret is the only 8-week cure for all types of hep C. Before starting Mavyret, your doctor will test if you've had hepatitis B, which may flare up and cause serious liver problems during and after treatment. Tell your doctor if you've had hepatitis B, a liver or kidney transplant, other liver problems, HIV-1, or other medical conditions, and all medicines you take. Don't take Mavyret with anazanavir or rifampin, or if you've had certain liver problems. If you've had or have serious liver problems other than hep C, there's a rare chance they may worsen. Signs of serious liver problems may include yellowing of the skin, abdominal pain or swelling, confusion, and unexplained bleeding or bruising. Tell your doctor if you develop symptoms of liver disease. Common side effects include headache and tiredness.
With hep C behind me, I feel free.
Fearless, because I am cured.
Talk to your doctor about Mavyret.
At Fidelity, you'll work with an advisor on a flexible wealth plan. And with new brokerage accounts, your cash is automatically invested at a rate that's at least 20 times more than other advisory firms. Personalized advice, unmatched value. At Fidelity, you can have both.
This Valentine's Day,
there was this huge bang.
Grab the one you love.
Pete grabbed his phone. He was gone.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Oh my God.
Will Ferrell.
Every day is all we have.
Downhill. Rated R.
And as you look at our incoming satellite feeds, we've got all the headquarters under observation, including lower left. Biden, the New Hampshire operation, but he's in South Carolina. But we expect to hear from Bernie, Pete, and Amy, as they want to be called, when we, just a few minutes from now. Here is, again, finishing order as of now in a race. Too early to call, 40% of the vote in. Steve Kornacki, you're continuing to fill in the colors on the map.
Yes, so here you go, statewide, 40% in. The margin here for Bernie Sanders statewide is 48-93, nearly 5,000 votes statewide over Pete Buttigieg. Again, what we're continuing, if Buttigieg is going to have a shot here, I can just tell you, it's going to be along this Mass New Hampshire line. We are still waiting on the biggies there to come in, more vote from Nashua to come in. Buttigieg is going to need some mighty big numbers there in those places. He's going to need Sanders to do poorly in those places if he's going to have a chance to make a run at him statewide. I can also tell you this, though. Again, this is ultimately about delegates. We always say that 24 delegates up for grabs. And our decision desk, we told you earlier, was confident that they could award 6 of those to Bernie Sanders. I now have an update here. Right now, our decision desk has added a 7th here. We're confident that statewide Bernie Sanders will get at least 3 delegates plus at least 2 in each of the 2 congressional districts in New Hampshire. That is a total of at least 7 for Bernie Sanders of the 24 delegates. We are also now confident that Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar will be breaking that 15% threshold. In Buttigieg's case, we are confident he will do it statewide and in both the 1st and the 2nd congressional district. And then he will get at least 2 delegates in each of those, or a total of 6. In Klobuchar's case, let me see if I can call this up. Right now, we're confident she'll hit that 15% threshold statewide and get at least 2 statewide delegates. And we're confident she'll get at least 15% in this, the 1st district, the eastern part of the state. We're not 100% confident at this point she will stay above 15% in the 2nd congressional district. You see Buttigieg outpacing her a little bit. Buttigieg has been doing well in those towns. So again, the estimate right now on those delegates at this point is 7 for Bernie Sanders, at least 7 for Bernie Sanders, at least 6 for Buttigieg, at least 4 for Klobuchar. And I could see a little bit more of the vote came in while I was up here. You can see Bernie Sanders has expanded his lead now to 43-10, to 53-10, 5,310 votes that just came in. I'm checking to see if we've got more Nashua. We don't. Checking to see if we've got more Manchester, to see if we got to 100% there. Dover, we've got 100% in Dover. That's what I'm being told. I can just show you here. I'm sorry, I know this map is a bit of a mess. 100% in Dover. Sanders wins this by 10 over Buttigieg. Klobuchar in 3rd. This is a solid victory for Sanders. An older city. This is a blue-collar place. He was able to win this by 10 points. Obviously won it in 2016 as well, and that has helped him build this lead statewide. Again now, about 5,313 votes.
Steve, can I ask you a little bit about Elizabeth Warren here? We're seeing Elizabeth Warren polling in 4th place at this point. It's interesting, we've seen 3 speeches so far tonight. We've seen Andrew Yang drop out of the race or suspend his campaign, Michael Bennet suspend his campaign, and we saw Elizabeth Warren give remarks early congratulating people who are placing ahead of her in the race thus far, but bugging out early on. With that 10% that she's polling out right now, putting her in 4th place, is NBC saying explicitly, projecting explicitly that means 0 delegates for her at the end of the night?
Yeah, they've said they're confident. I think we just saw a little bit more there. Just taking I'm trained now as soon as I see a move there to look. They've said they are confident she won't be hitting that 15% threshold either statewide or in either of those congressional districts. I can tell you from Elizabeth Warren's standpoint, the 2 big things that we're waiting on, and maybe she is to get that number up, Hanover. That's where Dartmouth College is. A lot of Democratic votes there. She could do very well in college towns. In Durham, other side of the state, University of New Hampshire. We saw her win where Iowa City is in Iowa, University of Iowa. Can she win the town where the University of New Hampshire is? Those could help her get that number up statewide. But given everything else you're seeing with her support, where she is lagging in this state, it's pretty spread out where she's lagging in single digits. And that's why our decision desk has said they're confident even if it goes up, it won't be going up to 15.
And Steve, in terms of Amy Klobuchar's performance thus far, she's at 3rd, a very strong 3rd, and very close to Pete Buttigieg in his 2nd place running right now, at least in terms of the vote that we've got in. Do you have any sense, either watching the way this campaign has gone or from the Klobuchar campaign, where they think they might be strongest and what parts of the state they've been concentrating in terms of what else we should look for with vote coming in?
The interesting thing is we saw it in those delegate projections. New Hampshire is basically, it's not a straight divide down the middle of the state, but the western half of the state is the 2nd congressional district. The eastern part there is the 1st congressional district. Our decision desk is saying they think she's running weaker in the western part of the state. And that gets you to the upper valley, the Connecticut River towns. We said at the start of the night, Sanders country, one of the stories that's emerging, and you can see it here, these navy blue places sort of in the western part of the state, is Buttigieg is performing probably better than expected in this part of the state. Remember, he had the endorsement of Congresswoman Custer from the 2nd Congressional District. Perhaps that helped him. Perhaps that gave him a leg up there. But Buttigieg doing a little bit better here in this part of the state. You can see it's these Manchester suburbs. You can see the orange you're seeing is more towards the eastern part of the state. That's where Klobuchar might be doing a little bit better. And again, the wild card. Boy, I thought we'd have some of them by now. Those towns on the Mass New Hampshire line. I practically grew up there. I can't wait for them to come in. I'm very excited for Hudson, New Hampshire to come in.
I never would have guessed you were excited, but nonetheless, I'm thrilled for you. I mean, those of us who have relatives in Massachusetts knew by heart where the state liquor store was in New Hampshire, where the car would veer off 95 because it was priority 1 to the parents. But I digress. Vaughn Hilliard is at Pete's headquarters. Vaughn.
Yeah, Brian, this is a place where if you're looking here from this event venue here in Nashua, these are the results that you were looking for. Essentially, you were able to make the case out of Iowa that you were tied with Bernie Sanders. And based off of these results that we're seeing here now, the Pete Buttigieg campaign wanted to leave this state, making the case that this was a choice for voters around the rest of the country between Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg. And as part of that, yes, they acknowledge, I guess you could say, the whiteness of Iowa, the whiteness of New Hampshire, and it does not represent these upcoming states of Nevada and South Carolina, but they wanted to be able to have the opportunity to go and convince those voters that they're equipped to win in November against Donald Trump in places like Iowa, in places like New Hampshire. And one of those figures that we were going to look at was the share of independent voters that Pete Buttigieg was going to be able to win over. Would he be able to bring some of those moderates or those Republicans on board? He showed an ability to do that, winning 21 of 31 counties that flipped from Obama to Trump in 2016. But then based off the exit polling that we have so far coming in here today, I want to point this out. 44% of the folks that took part in the Democratic primary here today say that they're registered independents. That is up from 4 years ago. Our exit polling also shows that there's a higher percentage of moderate folks that consider themselves to be moderate. And of the share of those 44% of independents, you guys, 21% said they went for Pete Buttigieg, 24% for Amy Klobuchar, 25% for Bernie Sanders. Why is this number significant? Because 4 years ago, Bernie Sanders acquired 73% of self-described independent voters here in the state. Pete Buttigieg went around just yesterday. We were in a community of Plymouth, New Hampshire, a place of 7,000 voters. This was a place that Trump won by 15 percentage points. Just a few weeks ago, he was in New Hampton, a place of 2,200. Yes, is Iowa and New Hampshire going to tell the whole story of the Democratic electorate? No, but the Pete Buttigieg campaign wanted to be in the position to be able to go to Nevada next week, South Carolina the week after that, and tell particularly communities of color where they're continuing to struggle in polling that they are the best equipped to beat Donald Trump. For the longest time, we've been going through South Carolina over the course of the last year, and it was Joe Biden you consistently heard from the voters on the ground, particularly older black voters, who believed that he was the best equipped to do that. Well, now the question is, for the Buttigieg campaign, this is exactly what they wanted. They may not walk away with the win tonight, but they wanted to be able to go mano a mano with Bernie Sanders. Of course, Amy Klobuchar is the wild card, but now to what extent are they actually able to convince the voters in Nevada and South Carolina, particularly those in communities of color, that they are viable next November? Brian?
Thank you, Vaughn. The rest of Manchester, New Hampshire just came in. Steve?
Yeah, this is significant. Again, biggest city in the state of New Hampshire, the Queen City. All of Manchester's in. Let me just get it up on the screen. There you go. 100%. I think this is very significant. Sanders wins Manchester now by a total of 10 points, 31-21 over Pete Buttigieg. Again, remember, look back to 2016. Sanders won it by 14. That was significantly less than his statewide number of 22. So there was potentially a bit of an opportunity here for the non-Sanders candidates. A double-digit win in the biggest city for Bernie Sanders over Pete Buttigieg. I think that's very significant for him. Also, we have been teeing these up all night, and I can tell you we're starting to get the border in here. Pelham, New Hampshire, again, bedroom communities, folks who live in New Hampshire, work in Massachusetts. You see here, Pete, not all of them, of course. Some of them are just pure New Hampshire people, but Pete Buttigieg, 28%, Bernie Sanders, 25%, Klobuchar, 18%. Take a look here in 2016. Again, Sanders, relative to his statewide performance in 16, didn't do quite as well here. An opportunity for the non-Sanders candidates, but maybe you want to be beating him by more than 3 points if you're Pete Buttigieg, given what you have got to make up statewide. We see Salem. We've been talking about this. There may be some more votes in here. There should be more votes than this in Salem. We're going to look into that. And Concord, is Concord now in 100%? Is that what I'm being told? 100% in the city of Concord, the capital city, third largest city in New Hampshire. That is now in here. You see Sanders 27, Klobuchar here. Again, we've talked about Klobuchar and Buttigieg maybe costing each other. Klobuchar actually getting into second place here. So now we're inching up near half the vote in here in New Hampshire. And you can see this Sanders margin. It is now climbing close to 6,000 votes statewide over Buttigieg. We said, look, if Buttigieg is going to make a run at him, he really needs some monster numbers there along the southern border. Not sure we're seeing those right now.
All right, Steve Kornacki, thank you. Back over to Shaq Brewster. He is covering Bernie election headquarters, where they should, if all the numbers hold, be celebrating a victory tonight, Shaq.
That's right, Brian. The mood is getting increasingly celebratory right now. It just got quiet, but there was actually a chant going on that I was trying to make out. Earlier, it was, "We are unstoppable. Donald Trump has got to go." And there was another one that I couldn't quite make out. But that's just an example of how excited people are getting here. Now, the results are coming in. Every time there's a new result on the screen, the crowd gets in an uproar of cheers. They're excited about what they're seeing. And, Brian, one thing I do want to point out is that we've been talking about how Senator Sanders here in New Hampshire has been playing on his home turf. He's a neighboring senator. He won here in 2016. There was an assumption that he had to do well here and that he could do well here. One thing you have to note is that he has also invested a lot in this state, and you hear the crowd now cheering as I can't quite tell what they're cheering at, but there's a picture up on the screen that shows the support that they have here. But the point I was making there was that he has invested a lot in this state. He has spent on television advertising more than any other candidate in this state, with the exception of Tom Steyer. His team says that they knocked on 700,000 doors with an army of volunteers. We were in a field office earlier today and saw people coming in from all over. This campaign has taken this state extremely seriously. I spoke to Senator Sanders, sat down with him in an interview, and he dismissed the idea that this was a must-win state for him. He called that media speculation. But if you look at how much he invested in this state, 80 different events, about 35 times he came to this state, you can tell this was a priority for them. If you listen to the crowd behind me, you listen to what his team is saying right now, they are liking what they're seeing. The results are still trickling in, so they're not getting too optimistic or too celebratory right now, but the mood is starting to shift as they start to see these results continue to come in. Brian?
Nicole Wallace is here with us. Thank you, Shaq. Your thoughts on the atmosphere and the lay of the land as we've been covering it?
Well, look, I asked David Plouffe, and I'll ask Claire and Joy now. I mean, just to show our work, we're all here, I think, burning up our own sources between staff on campaign headquarters, consultants for these campaigns, and sources in and around the DOJ crisis, which it is that. And it's funny, when you're talking about the DOJ crisis, you feel like you're depriving oxygen to this really important night in terms of who the Democrats are going to put up against Trump. When you're talking about that story, you feel like you're depriving air to what should be a national emergency. And the conversation, at least among Republicans, is who can call Barr? Who still has standing in this party that they can call Barr and say, whether you mean to corrupt DOJ, whether you are just trying to do what the president's asking you to do, this looks bad. So that's the conversation happening in former GOP circles. The conversation happening in FBI watching circles is about what's next. I mean, Trump is tweeting bat bleep crazy stuff on his Twitter feed right now, and I'm not an addict of his Twitter feed. I kind of go on and off it the way I do reality TV, but if you watch it tonight, it is some really scary, dark stuff that has an echo to an interview he did in 2017 with the New York Times, where he said, I want my Roy Cohn at DOJ. I want someone to protect me. And what he said today in the Roosevelt Room was about what he could do if he wanted to. And it sounds like he is unrestrained in terms of using the arms of justice, the American Justice Department, to eke out revenge. And all of the watching and all the anxiety is around the Manafort case, whether or not there's a pardon in the works there. Stone, whether one sentence, there'll be an instant pardon there. And around Mike Flynn and that imminent sentencing. And let me tell you something. I stopped saying we're near the bottom. This is what the bottom looked like, because I think we have no idea what the bottom looks like. And in terms of the other story we're covering tonight, I'm surprised that there isn't more optimism about the fact that wherever you come down on the left, you got Bernie looking super duper strong. That coalition is going to deliver him a decisive victory tonight, and two sort of Bernie alternatives. But no one feels like that's enough, Claire.
But here's the thing, Nicole. If you do the math, look at the math. 52% of these voters voted for either Buttigieg, Klobuchar, or Biden.
Right.
53%. 53% to 28% for Sanders.
Right. It's exactly what the Republican 2016 field was.
Exactly.
Rubio, Jeb, and
the angst I think you're feeling is we don't know the path yet to the candidate. We're not sure who the candidate's going to be. We're not even sure that we have the right candidate who can bring the coalition together. There's real questions, as you have eloquently said over and over again, about whether Buttigieg or Amy Klobuchar could ever resonate in the African-American community. And we all know if black women aren't there for us in November, we do not have a victory. So that's what you're feeling, this uncertainty about the path forward, because tonight was a winning night for some of the candidates. But it's about as clear as mud how this is all going to turn out.
Yeah. Well, I would just say that Amy Klobuchar is actually doing amazing.
There you go.
Steve keeps talking about Buttigieg and Klobuchar sort of splitting a vote that you could look at as a combined vote, and it's a little bit of a weird way to do it. I mean, there's other candidates there too, but to the extent that Bernie Sanders was seen as the front runner coming into New Hampshire, was expected to win in New Hampshire, looking at the non-Sanders vote sort of as a pile of anti-Sanders vote, I think is not an unreasonable way to
But it doesn't work that way, because anyone that comes in the top three thinks they can be the leader of the free world.
Correct.
Just ask Ted Cruz. Just ask John Kasich. Just ask Marco Rubio, and look how that ended.
And the question becomes, who should get out to consolidate the moderate vote? Pete Buttigieg can make the argument, I'm bringing sort of a fresh new, the model of a person with not a huge backstory.
Anti-Washington.
Meaning anti-Washington, I'm the outside candidate, I should stay in. Klobuchar can make the point, wait a minute, in this debate, I proved that I'm the person that has all of the benefits of you. I'm new, but I also have experience in Washington. We're going to be facing a Senate that still could have Mitch McConnell, even if we got the Senate as minority leader. And look what he was able to do before, I can produce. Both of them can make a case for staying in. And I would argue, and it's probably not a unpopular opinion, except with maybe Biden supporters, Biden actually can still make a case here. Biden can still say, Sumter County, South Carolina, as a South Carolina friend texted me, has 19,700 black voters in it, and it's the 8th largest county in South Carolina. The whole of New Hampshire has 18,000 African-American voters, according to the census.
And we're all hearing...
Nothing's been proved here about which of these people is viable with the most loyal wing of the Democratic Party. Biden could say, this was a focus group of white voters. Let's get to the focus group of Latino and African-American voters before you tell
and with the compressed primary schedule, honestly, I don't think anybody has a reason to get out right now. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I mean, we're going to have a normal weekend this weekend. I know, because I'm already planning on going ice fishing on Saturday. But then after that, we've got the next weekend is Nevada, the next weekend after that is South Carolina, and then 5 minutes after that, literally 3 days later, is Super Tuesday. So if you're in now, there's no reason not to be in through Super Tuesday and to try to push those kinds of cases that you're describing.
And we've also got Bloomberg out there saying, by the way, even despite my whole stop and frisk, you know, he owns the stop and frisk genre, right? You look up stop and frisk, his picture is on it, and he has a credible case that black voters are buying, that he's the guy that African-American voters should go with.
Can I say one weird, admittedly weird thing about the Bloomberg candidacy? Bloomberg keeps saying, I can spend indefinitely. I'm Mike Bloomberg. I'm the 12th richest person on the planet. I will spend to try to get myself to be the nominee. If I am not the nominee, I will spend just as much to get anybody elected against Donald Trump. So when we're thinking about the cash flow burning, right? When we're thinking about how many resources any of these candidates have, at some point, doesn't a likely nominee just attach itself to the rocket engine that is Michael Bloomberg's money if he's not going to be the nominee?
How does that work with Bernie? I don't, you know, how does Bernie take the billionaire as his engine? All Bernie does is campaign against billionaires. I mean, that was his tagline in New Hampshire.
Bloomberg isn't saying I'm going to try.
No billionaires. Anyone near a billionaire?
Bloomberg is saying I will spend any amount of money to keep Donald Trump out of a second term. He's not saying unless it's Bernie.
Right.
That's true. That's true. And Bernie ought to realize, and he was asked that question and he kind of garbled it.
As we head to a break, can I show you the loneliest job in politics? Can we go to Warren headquarters, please? where again tonight, all evidence is that Elizabeth Warren has finished out of the money. She has finished fourth. She is still at work, one after another after another. Since she gave her remarks earlier tonight, while we've been talking, while we've been covering other stories, Elizabeth Warren, who lives just to the south in the state of New Hampshire, is taking a picture with all who ask.
This isn't lonely to me. This is awesome. I love this.
She's a really, really good candidate.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, Joe Biden, his remarks tonight, the state of his campaign.
When fire and water threaten your home, hand the cleanup over to the team that stays with you every step of the way in your journey back. 1-800-SERVPRO and ServPro.com. Like it never even happened.
You have a good day on the mountain.
We had a great day.
You're like a rocket. Well,
For a moment, it felt dicey.
let's have a great time. Come on. Incredibly dicey. Pete ran. Pete left us.
Good Lord. But we're here, so let's just be here.
Every day is all we have.
Every day is all we have.
we have. Yep.
Powerful stuff.
Downhill. Rated R.
Wasn't me, baby. No, it wasn't me, baby. Baby, wasn't me. Must have been some other body. Baby, wasn't me.
Free 2-hour grocery delivery. Now with Prime.
Hush, little hiney, don't you cry. Duluth Trading made you new underwear. They're called dang soft, they're like a cloud, or maybe like a plushy snout. A pillow for your package, spread the word. Like a cuddly panda, hug your gird. Duluth Trading dang soft underwear. Lull your loins. Only at Duluth stores and DuluthTrading.com.
When we started our business, we were paying like an arm and a leg for the postage. I remember setting up ShipStation. I think it was just like 1 or 2 clicks. Everything was up and running. I was printing out labels and saving money.
ShipStation saves us so much time. It makes it really easy and seamless. Pick an order, print everything you need, slap the label onto the box, and it's ready to go.
Our cost for shipping, like, we're cut in half, just like that.
ShipStation, the #1 choice of online sellers. Go to ShipStation.com/try and get 2 months free.
The Real Real. Authenticated luxury consignment. From Gucci, Hermes, Louis Vuitton, Rolex, Cartier, and hundreds more at up to 90% off retail. All authenticated by our experts. Shop authenticated luxury the sustainable way, only at The Real Real. Get 20% off select items with the code REAL. The Real Real.
We eat to live, but food is so much more than that. It's actually baked into our culture and our politics. I'm Andrew Zimmer. Join me as I explore the biggest social and political questions of the day through the lens of food.
We feed America. We feed you.
Without immigrants and migrant workers, our food system would collapse. I'm tackling the issue of immigration on the premiere episode of What's Eating America.
Congressman Richmond, one of Joe Biden's early and most loyal supporters, is talking at the Biden event in Columbia, South Carolina. He will bring out the candidate, presumably. Steve Kornacki is looking at a more colored-in map of New Hampshire.
Yeah, Brian, you're seeing here again an advantage statewide for Bernie Sanders. It's hovering in near 6,000 right now with almost half the vote in. Buttigieg, again, we keep saying he is. You're seeing these towns here in Rockingham County, the southeastern part of the state. You're seeing a lot of navy blue here. We're waiting for the biggies to come in, so there is a chance for Buttigieg to cut into the lead that Sanders has statewide. Again, we'll see when those biggies come in. The other thing I can tell you is NBC News is ready to allocate some more national convention delegates. Last time we talked about this, Klobuchar had 4. The reason she had 4 and Buttigieg had 6 is we weren't confident that Klobuchar was going to reach that 15% threshold in both of the congressional districts. Now we are. The second congressional district, I can show you, here's the divide between them. You see the purple means Sanders is leading in both of New Hampshire's congressional districts. We weren't sure Klobuchar was going to finish above 15% in the second congressional district. Our decision desk has now seen enough. They are confident that she will. As a result, she will get at least 2 national convention delegates out of that district, out of the first as well, and statewide. So 7, 6, 6 right now with 5 still to be allocated. That's what our decision desk is confident in right now.
All right, Joe Biden, I'm told, is emerging after being introduced again.